Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Andrew Paterson, Michael Remis with you, and lots to get to after a white-knuckle ride last night at Mile High. Jets beating the Colorado Avalanche 4-3 in overtime on a game-winning smoker from Neil Pionk. We'll get to all of that and get ready for another big one tonight as the Jets finish up this road trip, looking to make it 2 of 3 and 2 in a row against the Vegas Golden Knights. Going to be a real fun show. We're going to talk Jets and more around the National Hockey League with one of our favorites, Mike Kelly of the NHL Network. Ken Wiebe is going to join us from Denver on his way to Vegas, and we will go to Sin City and hook up with our old pal Gary Lawless before tonight's game between the Jets and the Golden Knights. Just before we bring in Michael Remis, a big shout out to the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day, including Princess Auto, Coolbet, Not Auto Corp, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, F Apparel, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Little Brown Jug, Culligan Water, Wallace & Wallace, Vita Health, and of course our friends over at Consolidated Supply, and of course Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey, Canadian Club. And of course, Remis is going to want to talk about jerseys because the reverse retros have been thrown out today, and we'll get to that a little bit later on. But without further ado, let's bring in Remo and get this show on the road. It was quite the game last night, Remo. And hey, fact of the matter is, Jets a huge 2 points early in the season. I think it's a big confidence builder for the club, and as I said, it was a little hairy at times, but that's what happens when you're playing against the best team in the National Hockey League. Held on in the third period, got it to OT, and a very interesting overtime period that didn't last very long got the Jets a big 2 points. What's going on?
Yeah, feeling good here. Always in a good mood after a win. The mood in this, in the chat and, after Monday's loss to Dallas wasn't great. Nothing to be too excited about, but going into Colorado, you get off to the 2-0 lead. I think you're pumped, you're excited, but you've also been like, you know what, I've seen this before. We all remember last year when the Jets were up 3-0 on Colorado and ended up losing it. It almost happened again. We were getting text, I've seen this episode before. Is this a repeat? But no, Winnipeg Jets taking it to overtime. And I got to be honest, when I saw who was starting in overtime, Appleton, Lowry, and Pionk, I was like, the hell are they doing? They're trying to lose here. I was telling my wife this isn't going to go well. They're going up against McCarr, McKinnon, and Rantanen. That's not a recipe.
There was a method to the madness, Remis. A method to the madness.
No. And then, of course, Neil Pionk, his second of the game, the OT winner. I mean, you got to have a big smile on your face and feeling pretty good. The Jets went toe-to-toe with the Colorado Avalanche. Now, I don't think they're as good as they were when they won the Cup, missing Landeskog, Kadri off to Calgary, Burakovsky, Seattle. So, and of course, Darren Helm, not there. The fourth line, not exactly NHL regulars. But hey, you got the 2 points, feeling pretty good. I know I'm going to the buffet now. We talked about a lot. Let's talk about secondary scoring. You saw Dubois, Wheeler, and Perfetti getting in on the action. A lot to like from last night, Huss. A lot to like.
You know what? It really, listen, this is one of the biggest tests that, teams are going to get. And in the Central Division, the Colorado Avalanche are the standard right now. Frankly, in the entire National Hockey League, they're the standard. Yeah, you mentioned, they have had some changes. I think they're still clearly the best team in the Central Division right now. And I think you could definitely make the argument in the Western Conference. And hey, there's a reason why they're the Stanley Cup favorites to win the whole thing. But, coming off a particularly disappointing kind of mid-frame second half of the game against the Dallas Stars, and with a little bit of adversity for the first time in the lineup, not having Nikolai Ehlers, a shakeup with all three defense pairings, I love the way the team came out, especially in the first period. And I'm sure the Avalanche would say they didn't like their first, but, hey, listen, the Jets went out, got it done, staked themselves to that 2-0 lead, and put themselves in a position where they were very, very much in the game. Now, you knew that at times the Avalanche were going to have a big, big pushback. They got one early in the second period. Jets, to their credit, regained the lead. and a little bit of, well, I was say a penalty trouble. I mean, I still can't believe that chintzy slashing call that they gave to Mason Appleton, but it is what it is. And the next thing you know, it was 3-3, and the Jets were going into the third period. And, you know, the Jets I didn't think that they generated a ton in the third period, but they also, with the few exceptions, did a pretty good job of maintaining their composure, staying in their structure, and helping Connor Hellebuyck out. Hellebuyck did make a couple of massive saves, one point blank, one-timer in particular in the late third period, I thought was a huge point in the game, because that easily could have turned that 2 points into 0 in a regulation loss. But in the past, Remo, that's the way things have gone for the Winnipeg Jets. And I have to think that for a guy like Neil Pionk, for a player like Mason Appleton, for Cole Perfetti, Sam Gagner, for the second line, there was a lot to like about that game and a lot to build on, especially considering they got the result that they were hoping for, and that was 2 points.
Yeah, 2 points for keeping track of the jacket. Who was it? Pionk and Wheeler getting the unsung hero jacket and the player of the game jacket. And we look at the lines. Mason Appleton getting promoted to the top line. It wasn't Sam Gagner like it was in the morning skate. That was just a placeholder. And Mason Appleton he rose to the occasion, played well, and he had that play in overtime, rubbing out Nathan MacKinnon to spring Pionk for the goal. He ended up with 2 assists. I mean, you got to be pumped about that. And like, you're playing against Colorado. There are going to be shifts like the ones on the 2 Rantanen goals where you're struggling to get the puck out. They're moving around. They have so many good players with McKinnon, Rantanen, Nikushkin, Makar, Taves. I mean, it is tough. And there were 2 times there where, again, they struggled to get it. You're waving at the puck. You've been on for a while. You're tired. And they got theirs. But if you limit those chances, you can limit Colorado's effectiveness. They were slightly outshot, 33-28. But I think for most of the game, aside for those 2 shifts, they battled hard. They gave themselves a chance to win and put themselves in a great spot. And I think you said to me earlier, sometimes we take Connor Hellebuyck for granted, but he's definitely excellent. And in this win and the win against the Rangers, when they need saves, he is there stopping guys in big moments.
Yeah, you don't win without goaltending, and that is one thing the Winnipeg Jets, I think, can count on. Although, speaking of goaltending, we'll see Big Save Dave, or expecting to see Big Save Dave tonight, making his regular season debut for the Winnipeg Jets after finishing up that preseason with that brilliant shutout against the Calgary Flames. All right, we're going to hear from Coach Arneal in a minute. And by the way, a little WST welcome to our guy Jeremy, who's helping us behind the scenes today, from the long list of our good friend Alex's team. He's from Team Alex, if you will. And when Remo decides that it's time to grow the family and is away for a little bit, Jeremy's going to be hanging out. So I did want to give him a big welcome. And of course, everyone that's with us right now, you just saw it on that screen. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that red subscribe button. And of course, you can always get Winnipeg Sports Talk on the audio podcast as well. If you're with us on YouTube, go to wherever you get your favorite podcast and just search Winnipeg Sports Talk. And that sucker will drop in usually just after 3 p.m. when we finish the show, just in time for your ride home. Okay, just, Jeremy, if you want to get those clips ready, we'll go 1 through 4. But just before we do that, I want to drop the why not question of the day, because it is something that we're going to be talking about, a very interesting start to overtime. And it was unconventional. It was not something I expected, but man, it worked out for the Winnipeg Jets. And that, of course, was starting with Pionk, but Mason Appleton and Adam Lowry to essentially try to handle Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar. We know the way that it worked out right now, but interested in your thoughts. Would you start overtime in particular situations with 2 defensively responsible checking players to try to get through? Hit us up in the comments for our why not question of the day right now. But we're going to hear from Scott Arneal right now. And he talked about the decision of starting Appleton and Lowry in 3-on-3 overtime last night. Here's the acting head coach of the Jets.
Yeah, we did it. We were trying to do it most of the game. We wanted Low against the MacKinnon line. We did it 4-on-4 as well. And
yeah, I can't hear you.
For a while there, every time we started Low on faceoffs, they weren't putting their big line out there. And so, you know what, that was their matchup. We wanted that line to go against them, and then Apple has had a real strong game playing with Scheif and those guys, and just wanted to make sure that we nullified what they were throwing at us in that first shift.
All right, so there's Scott Arniel with the decision to throw out Appleton and Lowry, and essentially, exactly as he said, trying to nullify them on their first shift. And, would you do that normally? No. But, from where I'm sitting, Remis, Cale Makar in particular, never mind Nate McKinnon, is such a special player that at 3-on-3 can do so many things. You kind of have to be thinking survival through that first minute to 90 seconds. And I mean, the ironic thing about it was they didn't even get to the point where they could survive that shift so that Scheifele and Connor could come out maybe against a different matchup, one that had kind of really taken it to them at times last week. Because, of course, Neil Pionk had that rocket into the top corner. As I said, very unconventional, but considering the situation and the guys that they were going through, surviving those first couple minutes of overtime or even getting it to a shootout, I think probably played into the Winnipeg Jets fans. It's kind of funny that we didn't get to see it because it was such a good decision. They scored 30 seconds in.
Yeah, I looked at maybe shot attempts and saw Connor Scheifele had a lot shot attempts on ice against Lowry, Appleton, more defensively responsible players. Personally, for me, I said earlier, when they threw those guys out, I was not in favor. I would have never done that. I think 3-on-3 overtime, there's a lot of ice out there, a lot of skating. You want to have your best players on. And I enjoyed Murat's tweet right before. Lowry Appleton is such an odd choice to me. You want to play defense in OT, take the puck and keep it. I tend to believe him. I tend to agree with that. And then he tweeted after, forget everything I said once they scored. I think it worked out. I think it's something you're not going to do every time. No, I don't think it worked. It definitely worked out. It's something I wouldn't do every time. I don't know. I wouldn't do that. So, but what do I know? I'm sitting here in my basement streaming on YouTube, not behind the bench of an NHL hockey team. I'm curious if they would do that in the future. But I think I think OT, there's a lot of ice, a lot of space. You got to be focused on getting the puck, not playing defense.
Kenny's water bottle in chat. It's funny. Fans OK was starting Lowry, Appleton, and Pionk in OT because the Jets won. Imagine if Colorado had scored to start OT. Fans would be wanting coaches fired.
Yes.
Yeah. You know what? Listen, the coaches can't do things because of what people in the chat room think. I mean, for crying out loud, if that was the case, Sami Niku would be the captain of the Winnipeg Jets right now. And, there'd be a lot of things that would have been changed over the years. I'm joking, of course, about that. But to me, this was all about trying to survive, much like the third period was trying to get it to overtime and withstand the push of the Colorado Avalanche. I think Scott Arniel believed that Mason Appleton and Adam Lowry gave him the best chance of getting it past that first minute and that first shift with Makar and McKinnon, and then give his top scorers the best opportunity. Because to be honest, I mean, if we've seen before, Remo, at times, I mean, is Kyle Connor or Mark Scheifele making that play along the wall to get that puck? Probably not. And I mean, that's the one thing that I will stand on. This was a calculated decision to try to limit the possibility of those guys ending it on that first shift. And the funny thing about it was such a great play along the wall by Appleton to spring Pionk and Lowry. They actually ended up getting it. The shot by Pionk, a huge game for the Pionky Tonk man with that goal early on. And then the winner was a big part of the game. We'll talk about that as well. But here's the next one from Scott Arniel. Clip number 2, Jer. Just spoke about the game, the ups and downs hanging on, and of course, coming away with 2 points.
Yeah, I mean, it was for, what was it, 34 minutes. We were pretty good, and it was like that after that last time out in the second period. They got momentum, crowd got into it, they got going. We turned some pucks over in our end of the rink, and, they got it back. But the big thing there, sort of the message going into the third was that we were in a tie game on the road. Just stick to what we had done for most of the game, and that was our details, kind of the stuff I talked about this morning, our details, our compete, just protecting our net front, and found a way to win.
Found a way to win indeed, a big 2 points. And I have to think, and we'll talk about this with Ken a little bit later on, Reem. Considering the nightmares that this team has had in Colorado over the last few seasons, And particularly that game last year where they were up 3-0, and then it was a literal avalanche for those final 2 periods. I think they gave up 7 in a row. To survive the push of the Avalanche, to get it to overtime, and to get the 2 points the way they did this early in the season has to bode well for the collective psyche of a team that I think, is still learning more about themselves, learning more about what they're capable of under this new structure. But the bottom line is, when you're making big changes and significant changes, you need some good things to happen to reinforce those. And the result last night, I think, certainly would fall into that category.
Oh, yeah, I think you ought to be pumped. One thing that we've liked to see is rewarding the fourth line with ice time in the win against the Rangers. You saw the fourth line get in there and check and score the go-ahead goal with Sam Gagner. You saw them trust in Appleton and Lowry in overtime, and they reward them with a goal. And even in the final minutes of the game yesterday, more of a collective team. Everyone's has a role. They've preached we're a family, and I think you see that a lot with the way they've acted, off the ice, just from what we've seen on the social media posts, what they've said. So yeah, I think this is a big road trip at the start of the year. They had the Banff trip to bring them together. Now this road trip, if you can end it with another 2 points here on back to back, that would be pretty awesome. LA had a tough back to back early this weekend, Detroit and Nashville, and were able to come out in overtime and actually in both of those. So I don't think it's out of the question here for the Jets to grab another 2 points. We'll have to wait and see what the lineup is, Hustler. Not sure about Nikolai Ehlers' status. The game time decision, he didn't get called into the game. They went with Appleton. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. But we're also anticipating David Rittich getting the start as the second game back-to-back.
Yeah, we'll see what Big Save Dave has for the fans tonight in his first start in the regular season for the Winnipeg Jets. All right, we'll hear from our Neil on Perfetti, Dubois, and Wheeler a little bit later on, and maybe a little bit more from Neil Pionk. But we're going to bring on Mike Kelly, one of our favorites from the NHL Network, to chat it up about the early start to the season and his thoughts on the Winnipeg Jets. Just before we do that, I want to give a big shout out to our friends at Consolidated Supply, the turf, irrigation, artificial turf, and golf cart experts working with golf courses for decades here in Manitoba, and now can help you with your property lawn, both at home or away on the cottage, even with watering systems that'll take care of business when you're not there. Of course, if you are thinking about maybe that dream putting green in the backyard, our pal Joe over at Consolidated can certainly help you with that. And while you're thinking about that project, think about hot tubs, an amazing selection of beautiful high-end hot tubs over at Consolidated Supply. And of course, they've also got amazing outdoor kitchens, barbecues, and more. Find out what Consolidated Supply can do for you. You can check them out online at cte.ca. They're 1395 Niagara Road East. Our friends at Vita Health Fresh Market, of course, is the home of the best prices on natural and organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries, with Winnipeg's largest assortment of local products as well. And with the kids back in school right now, a great spot for school-friendly snacks and lunch items and great immunity products like vitamin C and D. And for those of you on the go, they've got delicious, healthy lunch options like Vita Market soups, salads, and sandwiches ready to go in their grab-and-go deli. Vita Health Fresh Market, empowering people to lead healthy lives with 7 Winnipeg locations, including the newest store in Linden Ridge and online at myvita.ca. And a big shout out to our friends at Wallace & Wallace. You know they're the fencing experts for decades here in Winnipeg. You've seen their fences and trucks all over the city. What you might not have known is they're also the leader in overhead and garage doors, working with Clopay, the world's leading overhead door manufacturer, with 161 styles. They've certainly got one that's right for your home. And of course, a new over garage door can add up to 4% to the value of your home as well. Find out more at their showroom over on Lawson Road, or find out more at wallacedoors.com. And of course, wallacefences.com for all your home and business security needs. All right, looking forward to this one. For the first time this season, we bring in our guy, Mike Kelly from the NHL Network, now that the puck has dropped on the season. Mike, what's going on? Thanks so much for doing this. It's great to catch up again.
Yeah, good to be here, Mr. Paterson. Always like hanging out on your show, and happy we could do it. It's just great to have hockey back. And man, preseason, it's too long. I can't get into it. And I was just waiting for the regular season to get going. So this is kind of a fun time of year, I think, because we're kind of approaching 5 games for every team. You're starting to get, early indications of what might be going on, and it's great. So enjoy it.
Well, I'll say this. I'm like you most of the time. Just get through the preseason and get to game one. But I have to admit, it was very different in Winnipeg this preseason, this training camp, because of the new sheriff in town and Rick Bowness. And, you had some competition, you had some new players in lineups, and it was also trying to see what the structure of the Winnipeg Jets would be, considering how much work they had to do on the things that really cost them last year in that disappointing season last year. So it was a little bit different. That being said, we're now into the regular season, and we haven't seen Rick Bowness behind the bench yet because, unfortunately, he was struggling with COVID right before the home opener. Sort of a bizarre way for the team to get going, but a couple of nice results, including a big 2 points last night in a white knuckle ride in Denver.
Yeah, that was a fun game to watch. I was in studio over at the NHL Network watching that one, and Winnipeg kind of let them back into the game a little bit. And if you get that Avalanche rolling, terrible pun, apologies, it's usually pretty tough to stop. So they get out on the right side of it in the end. Great overtime goal. But we can talk a little bit more about Rick Bowness if you like as we go here. But I think, early signs from this team, it's too early to really say anything. Sure. It's going to be good, and it's been good. And look, you can go to Colorado and get 2 points. Take it however you can get it. That's great.
Well, no doubt about that. We'll get back because there's a very interesting thing that happened in the game that I want to get your perspective on. But, we talked a lot about the Jets and the things that really sunk them last year. Team defense, attention to detail, puck management, and there was all things I think that we agreed that this team needed to change. The one thing that didn't change very much was the personnel. There's a few new players, but for the most part, they've sort of run it back, even, players that we thought might be on their way out. Mike, how big of an effect can Rick Bowness and his new coaching staff, do you think, have on a team with a lot of talent that disappointed last season?
I think he can have enough of an effect to get this team back into the playoffs. And that's where I think they should be. You look at the roster, and at the very least, they should be right in the thick of battling for a playoff spot. Maybe you get in, maybe you don't. But better results than we've seen in the past. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Andrew, talking about what's kind of plagued this team a little bit. They can score. Their top 6 is really good. Connor Hellebuck's an elite goalie still, really good. Their team defense has been abysmal the last few years, and they give up way too many chances, way too often. And the one thing about Rick Bowness, he's been around a long time and he's back in the head coaching role now, is I think because in Dallas, they emphasize team defense so much, and the team did struggle to score some time. He kind of got labeled a bit as a defense guy. I think there's more to that with Rick Bowness. I think that's over simplistic. I know that he prioritizes just having a really good checking game. And that's not running around and hitting everybody and playing like the Bash Brothers and the Mighty Ducks. It's about being above the puck and getting good sticks and lanes in every zone. And those are critical elements to winning hockey games. And every coach should prioritize those things. But I know he does. And I know that's what he wants to try to get out of this team. That will help them be better defensively. And it will lead to offensive opportunities. So, look at the overtime goal, right? Mason Appleton, good position on McKinnon, squeezes him off on the boards. You go up the ice, you score a goal. That's where I think he can have a positive effect on this team. And if they can just be average defensively with the goaltending they have, with the forwards that they have, they should be right in that mix for a playoff spot. That's where they should be.
Mike, okay, let's talk about the overtime because, I certainly wasn't the only one that, saw the go out and, there's McKinnon, there's Makar, there's Retinen. Well, wait a second. Adam Lowry and Mason Appleton are the 2 forwards. It was, a very unconventional strategy. And Scott Arniel said they, wanted to give themselves a best chance of basically negating those players who were so dangerous. What did you think of that decision? Obviously, it worked out, but how unusual is that? And, considering what the Jets were going up against, what did you think about the way they deployed their forwards right out of the gate in the 3-on-3?
It's a zero-sum game with coaching, right? It worked, so it was a great decision. And if it didn't work, we'd be having a different conversation. Yeah, I didn't hear any of the post-game comments, but that makes sense, right? Because my thought in seeing that when it was happening in real time was, I think the idea here, and you see some teams do this, is try to win the draw, control the puck, move it around, try to eat 45 seconds of time and get those guys off the ice. And then you can go out and have a preferable offensive matchup. With maybe the thinking being that our top offensive guys against theirs, they still have the advantage because Colorado with 3 guys has the advantage over everybody in the league. So maybe that was the thinking there. Now they lost the draw. Rantanen had a good chance from the slot. Didn't go in, but they're able to turn the puck up ice and score the overtime goal. So, Lowry is often used in defensive situations, and he certainly was in that game. The Scheifele line with Appleton on it was used in defensive situations in that game. So those are the guys you're going to put out there if you want to play that way. So I understand it from that end. And like I said, it worked, right? So genius.
No doubt about it. Mike Kelly from the NHL Network with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. We didn't see Nikolai Ehlers last night, unfortunately, and he's still a game time decision for this evening's game in Sin City against the Vegas Golden Knights. So it was Mason Appleton who had his best game of the year, getting an opportunity to play with the big boys in Scheifele and Connor, and obviously impactful on a couple of goals, both actually, ironically, being out with Adam Lowry. But Connor, Scheifele, Ehlers, Mike, what are your expectations for that line? How good can they be? And where would they rank amongst the best lines in the National Hockey League when they're going?
Yeah, I expect them to be really good. And they should rank among the top half of top lines in the league when you look at what those 3 guys are able to do. And, as you well know, and so do Jets fans listening to this, like Paul Maurice oftentimes like to put Nick Ehlers in a bit of a lower role and try to get those mismatches, right, against other forward lines deeper down, other D pairings deeper down, because Nick Ehlers is good. He can eat those guys alive, and he did. And so that's a philosophy that had some success, and that's great. Nick Ehlers, to me, is a top-line talent, and so I like the idea. I don't think Maurice was wrong. It's just a different approach. I like the idea. Load up a top line, go to work, and beat the other top lines. So, Nick Ehlers, one of the best puck-moving, puck-transitioning forwards in the NHL, right? Exits, entries, off the rush, dynamic and elite, good playmaker also. Mark Scheifele, that good all-around center. He can kind of do it all. Top-end guy. And Kyle Connor, just phenomenal skater, great shot, terrific elite goal scorer. So when you put all those elements together, it's not 3 of the same guy. It's elite traits brought by everybody that should produce a really successful line. And we'll have to wait and see, but early returns when they've been together this season, still very early. Positive chance differential, expected goal differential when they're out there, as it should be. But it's a line that I'm excited. You look around the league, it's a line that I'm excited to see what they can do together over a bigger sample size.
Well, I mean, speaking of small sample sizes, we're only 3 games in right now, and there's not a lot to go on. But from the 9+ periods the Jets have played, from what you've seen, Mike, what do you make of the changes structurally? Are they on the right track?
Well, they've been better. Again, we're talking small sample, but that's all we can do right now. They've been better defensively, closer to average. And like I said, I think that could be okay for them. The goaltending's been really strong, and that's good. And I expect from what I've seen so far, based on the opportunities that Winnipeg has created and the quality of them, that the even strength scoring could even be a little bit higher. So I like to process those, what I'm trying to say. The one thing that I think we'll have to watch for and revisit this in another few games is the penalty kill. I think it's 71 point something % right now. So not great, but man, they've been giving up a lot of looks on the penalty kill, expected goals against right at the bottom of the league in that area. So that's something to keep an eye on. And the schedule is going to get a little tough over the next several games. So I'd keep an eye on that, but early returns, and again, it's tough because Ehlers is such a key piece, and he missed a game also, and it jumbled the lines. But early returns is the team looks pretty good, and they certainly look a little bit better defensively in terms of what they're allowing.
Hey, just a systems questions for you, because you're a great guy to ask on this. You mentioned the penalty kill, and last night, on one of the goals that Colorado scored, it seemed like the PK was literally just boxed in right in front of Connor Hellebuck. I mean, they just kept retreating and retreating. And then they still were able to get a spot to Rantanen right in front of the net. going up against a power play like the Colorado Avalanche, I mean, one of the most elite power plays in the league that whips the puck around at elite speed. I mean, I guess if everyone knew the simple answer, it would be a lot easier that they had a 50% power play clip coming into the game. But what is the key to give yourself the best chance to survive 2 minutes against a team like the Colorado Avalanche at 5-on-4?
Don't take penalties. It's like,
have a good goalie.
Have a good goalie. Have 2 goalies in the net. You bring up a great point, though, right? Like, if someone knew how to stop it, well, then great. But the thing that makes that power play pretty special, in my view, is so Landeskog's out, right? And he's a great net front presence, one of the best at deflecting pucks in the league, plays that role so well. Val Nichushkin has been such a key on that power play this season for them. And Mikko Rantanen, and, you know, a lot of times I talk about elite players in the league and really dissecting their game. You can find areas where they're like, yep, Crosby's the best at that, or McKinnon's the best at that. Rantanen, it's not so much that he's the best at anything that I measure anyways, that is, you know, kind of a key performance indicator. He's really good in a lot of areas. And one thing that he might be the best at, though, is making passes under pressure and into tight spaces. And that's exactly what he did on that goal, right? And so you talk about, like, you box in and you just try to take away that middle of the ice. You look at Val Nichushkin, some of the power play goals he scored this season. It's Rantanen kind of up towards the top of the right faceoff circle, feeding Nichushkin for these deflection plays in front of the net. And they didn't do that there. And Winnipeg would have been able to protect against that pretty well in how they were playing. But Nichushkin went up, and that kind of give and go with Rantanen, they can beat you in so many different ways. And to me, a great power play is a versatile one, where it's not, hey, that's the one-timer threat and we can block it and guard it because we know it's coming. There's so much skill on that power play. I don't know what a one-size-fits-all approach would be to trying to defend it. If I did, I'd probably be behind an NHL bench right now and not in a hotel room in New Jersey.
Hire Mike Kelly, folks. Hey, just quickly on the Avs. I mean, they have had, you know, a lot of turnover. I mean, no Nazem Kadri, Burakovsky's in. Just how close do you think this team is to the team that won the championship last year? And are they still your clear favorite in the Central, in the West, and are they your favorite in the NHL?
I think they've earned that right. I do believe they've probably taken a little bit of a step back, because how could you not? You lose Kadri, you lose Burakovsky, and you bring in Rodriguez. Sam Girard's back. He wasn't there for so much of that cup run. You know, if they were 99 before, maybe they're a little less now, but they're still the elite of the elite. And I don't just default to, well, last year's cup winner should be the favorite this year automatically. I think Calgary's right in that mix. I picked Calgary to win the West last year. Maybe I was a year too early is all that was, but maybe I was just dead wrong too. So I like the Avs a lot. And, you know, I still think that, I know they're giving Alex Newhook a big look at that number 2 center spot, earn the opportunity as a young player. And if he can do it, that's the best fit. Evan Rodriguez, to me, is someone who needs to touch the puck to be effective offensively. You'd think you can say that about every player, but I've done research on this, and I do believe it matters more for certain guys. And he's a guy where it does matter. And when he played center with the Penguins at the start of last season, because everybody was injured down the middle, he put up great results at even strength. He was really good on the power play too. I know they're not going to rush to make that move. For me, it's something I probably would tinker with, but, you know, default to Jared Bednar here. He's an excellent coach. He won a Stanley Cup. Not going to question him. So look, I still think they're the team to beat. With no Landeskog, it hurts them a bit. Devon Taves, I don't know what the latest is with him, but if he misses any kind of meaningful time, I mean, that would be a severe loss, because he's one of the best defensemen in the league.
Still can't believe they got him for 2 second rounders, but that's another conversation entirely. Mike, we're seeing Vegas for the first time tonight. What have you seen so far from Vegas? And we talked a lot about the effect that Rick Bowness has and can have on the Winnipeg Jets. What does the arrival of Bruce Cassidy do to Vegas?
Yeah, they've looked good. Obviously, I think the big question coming in with Vegas was the goaltending. And, you know, it's too early for any kind of, you know, victory lap. That's not what this is about. But I really do believe in Logan Thompson. I think he can be a good starter for them. They're going to platoon a little bit, obviously, and that's fine. But it was a small sample, you know, roughly 20 games before the season. He looked really good, just like his game in general, as much as, you know, young goalies with not a lot of experience is voodoo. But I think they'll be fine there, and they've looked fine there so far. So the rest of the team there's so much talent on it. And Bruce Cassidy's always gotten a lot out of his teams in Boston. They've defended really well, always, finished well in the standings. So I think that Vegas team, with everything that they went through last year and missing the playoffs and why they missed the playoffs, I expect them to be a top 3 team in the division and to contend for the division title. That's kind of what they've looked like so far. I just think they're a really good team, and Cassidy's a good coach. And I do think the goaltending will hold up, so they should be right in that mix.
Mike, Leafs are in town on Saturday, and didn't take long for a lot of noise to get around the blue and white early on the season. I guess that's what happens when you lose to Montreal, and then a home loss to Arizona certainly will get people pretty cranky. What are your thoughts on everything going on around the Leafs and some early season struggles that I don't think a lot of people saw coming?
I came down to the U.S. to avoid having to talk about the Leafs so much. But you know what? This is big news even down here at the NHL Network in the States. So, look, they're 2-2. They started last year worse. They set a franchise record in points. Not overly concerned about the Maple Leafs. The Sheldon Keefe stuff, the comment that he made about the elite players, and then, feeling he had to address it again because he didn't want the media to turn it into something bigger, what have you. I guess that's what you sign up for in Toronto. It's a hot media market, and when things are going well, I mean, it's everywhere. But when it isn't, it's the same thing. So I'm not overly concerned. The Arizona loss was bad. They played turnovers, like they just didn't play well, and Arizona didn't play well either, and they won't most nights, and still won. So I get why there's fans that would be upset about that, why they would boo them at the game. It's the right to do that. It's not the result you'd expect against that team. But I still think Toronto is in general going to be fine. Dennis Mulligan to me was never the answer as a second line winger. And now Nick Robertson is going to get a shot there with some cap space opening up. So Nylander and Tavares have been great. I think they're best forwards. I think Matthews and Marner have been good, even though, Austin's not on a 75 goal pace through 4 games, but he'll be fine. So nothing that a win can't
What about
cure,
their
right?
goaltending? Like and I still listen, Jack Campbell signed and he got the term that maybe the Leafs didn't want to give him in Edmonton. But I mean, I was very skeptical about the Matt Murray deal. He's already out. You've got Ilya Samsonov coming in that, will really be counted on. How concerning is the goaltending for the Toronto Maple Leafs right now, where they stand coming into Winnipeg on Saturday night?
Well, Samsonov, I think, because he's going by now, he's been fine. So, but again, there's not a great sample of long-term success there. And Matt Murray being injured, it's unfortunate and you feel for him, but it's not shocking just based on recent history. So I think you had to prepare for that. And Samsonov being there is being prepared for that. So I think the Maple Leafs are a good enough team. I think they're a good enough defensive team that they can help insulate whatever goaltending there is there. Like, let's not forget, last season, Jack Campbell was an all-star, right? Great start to the season, very poor finish. Last season, the Maple Leafs, in terms of goals saved above expected, so sorry if you could hear my phone ring. In terms of isolated goaltending impact, the Maple Leafs were a bottom 5 team. I think they were 5th worst in the NHL. But they can still be incredibly successful because their defense is good in terms of team defense, and their forwards can score so much. What would concern me more with Toronto is the defensive depth on the blue line. Like, Muzzin and Hole, to me, is not a great second pairing if you are fancying yourself a Stanley Cup contender. And now Muzzin's out, so it complicates things further. I think that's where the bigger concern will end up being with the team. And look, that'll show in goaltending too, right? It'll show in goals against. But a couple games, Samsonov's looked fine, so I guess not worried until there's something to worry about.
Mike Kelly of the NHL Network with us. Mike, quickly, I just want to ask you, there's a group of teams in the East that have been basically getting run over for the better part of the last 5 years. The Ottawa Senators, the Buffalo Sabres, and the Detroit Red Wings. We joked that the Sens were the off-season champions, and they got to raise the banner. And then Brad Treleving entered the chat with what he did after all the adversity they've got. So we can have that decision. But as far as the East goes, from what you've seen so far and just the way these teams are built, how would you compare the chances of Ottawa, Buffalo, and Detroit making a big push and at least being relevant in the playoff race in the final month of the season?
Yeah, I like the way you phrase that. I could see relevant for one of those teams, even a couple of those teams. No question. I don't expect Ottawa to make the playoffs, or Detroit or Buffalo. If I was having to bet on it, for instance. Look, everyone was so high on Ottawa. Hey, are they going to be a playoff team? Look at their roster now. Look how much they missed the playoffs by last season. That's the gap to make up. They could finish with 15 more points this season, which would be a massive win and still not get to where you would have needed to last year. But the bottom of the East is stronger, right? So there's not going to be 8 playoff teams with over 100 points this year. The gap is closed. And like Eric Comrie just had a great game for the Sabres, getting them a win. The Senators, I mean, that was a crazy game against Boston. They scored 7 goals, back and forth hockey. I've got family and friends in Ottawa. They're just excited to have an exciting team to watch. And it's going to be exciting hockey there. And Detroit was my pick for the sneaky team to watch this season in general. Just a team that I think could be in the conversation longer than people think. And that would be a win for them. They've got good young players developing. I like the goaltending there enough. Sneakily, Mata comes in, sign him on a pretty low deal. And he's played more even strength minutes than any other player on the team right now. He's got 4 points and been an effective piece for them. So what Steve Yzerman's doing there is great. I don't think it'll happen this year necessarily, but that gap is closing, like you said, and it's just more fun when you've got more teams in the mix later in the year, right? Like we knew what the East was going to be a couple months before the season ended. So it's great to see those teams
15 games into the season last year. I mean, I've never seen a playoff race with less suspense than the Eastern Conference last year. I mean, there were 8 teams that were in. Everyone else had a huge gap, and we know how hard, with the loser point, how hard it is right now to make up ground on teams right now. Mike, this has been awesome. I got to ask you one more. We mentioned the offseason champs, the Ottawa Senators, and then there's the Calgary Flames. Just an absolutely wild offseason that started with a lot of doom and gloom when Johnny Gaudreau left without the Flames getting anything. Matthew Tkachuk letting him know that he was out of there. And somehow Brad Treliving turns that into Mackenzie Weegar, Jonathan Huberdeau, signs them both to 8-year extensions before they even play a game, and then get Nazem Kadri as a free agent from the Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche. How would you compare this year's Flames to last year's, and could they actually be better this year than they were last season?
Yeah, I think they're better. Got a first-round pick, too, a prospect. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable given the circumstances. Like you pointed out, right? Gaudreau and Tkachuk said, we're going somewhere else now, and everyone knew it. So bye-bye leverage. What Brad Treliving was able to do, if there was a grade higher than A+, I'd give him that grade. It was incredible. And I do think they're better. Mackenzie Weegar is such a sneaky good defenseman. People in Florida know it. People in Calgary, if they don't already know it, they're going to find it out very quickly. He can be a de facto kind of one, and he's had to be when Ekblad's been injured in the past, and they've been fine. Topical because Ekblad's now out, and they don't have Mackenzie Weegar in Florida. That blue line is a mess right now in Florida. So I don't know how you could label what Calgary's done as anything other than a grand slam home run. If you could have a 5-run home run, that's what it would be. So full marks to them, and I do think they're better. I think they're more poised for playoff success. They're to me right now, if you pick a handful of teams to be your top-end Stanley Cup contenders, they're in it without question.
Listen, so I got to ask you about Maurice and the Panthers, considering all the turnover there. I mean, he had this great season. They got a new coach. They got like 13 new players. I thought that they could be a team that took a significant step back, to be honest. They've looked pretty good so far this season. Now, what are your thoughts on the Panthers before we go?
Yeah, look, they still have a lot of good players there. I do as much. So if Calgary took a step forward, I agree Florida took a step back. And I think that they got a little too zeroed in on maybe what they were missing in the postseason when they play a team like Tampa Bay. And, Washington gave them a tough series. And you get it pushed out a little bit in the game. So you're like, you know what, Matthew Tkachuk, yes, that is the answer, a big answer for that kind of thing. But what did you have to give up to get him? You give up Jonathan Huberdeau. Right. And maybe you didn't have plans to bring Huberdeau back anyways, and maybe there's cap reasons, whatever it might be. But the fact of the matter is, Huberdeau's not there anymore. Uyghur's not there anymore. Mason Marchment isn't there anymore. He's going to pop in Dallas this year. He's been really good for them already. And so, again, you look at that blue line now, and Ekblad, you couldn't have predicted an injury at this point. But again, he's a guy who's had injury issues. So you want to hopefully be prepared for that. I think Florida is in need of a move to address some of what they're missing. But they've got, cap issues as well, as most teams do in the league. So I'm with you. I think they're going to be fighting it for a while.
Mike, this has been so much fun. Thank you very much for jumping on. It's always a pleasure getting inside your brain, talking NHL. Just for folks that would like to more from you, fill people in on what you got cooking at the NHL Network and everything else.
Yeah, thank you. Most people don't want to have anything to do with getting inside of my brain, and I don't blame them. So I appreciate the compliment. But yeah, it's fun down here at the network right now. So you can follow me on Twitter if you want to, at Mike Kelly NHL. Kind of more stats, video type analysis that I do if you're interested in that stuff. But it's cool. Yeah, I did a demo. I had a lot of fun doing with Kevin Weeks yesterday. We talked about short side, sharp angle goals, just players picking that spot more than ever, and why they're doing it, why they've been able to do it, what goalies are doing to combat it right now. So it was a cool discussion. And then Weeksy was demoing kind of what the goalies are thinking in the net too. He strapped the pads on, and it was fun. So I always like being down here. They give us kind of leeway and a lot of time to do the things we want to do. And it's a fun place to be. So check it out on NHL Network.
People's Insider. Yeah, say what's up to the People's Insider from all of his fans here in Winnipeg. What a beauty he is. Mike, thanks again for doing this. Keep up the great work, and hopefully we can do this again later on this season.
Yeah, 100%. I was hoping Weeksy would get some breaking news on the desk so he could go like behind a curtain and I could see one of his tweets in person, how he does it. But good people to work with, and yeah, happy to chat again anytime. Thanks.
No doubt. Thanks so much. Mike Kelly, NHL Network. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mike Kelly NHL. Again, thoughts for the Not AutoCorp Why Not question of the day in the comments of the YouTube channel today. What did you think of the decision that ended up looking pretty good after the winning goal was scored of the very unconventional start to overtime with Appleton and Lowry? Interested in your thoughts on that. Big Tesla event over at Not AutoCorp all weekend going until Monday at 9 p.m. If you get the opportunity, if you have ever thought about getting into an electric vehicle, this is the time to do it. 30 Teslas on the lot, reduced pricing, plus an extra $1,000 in finance credits or gift cards, no gas, fully electric. We've told you about the Tesla Experience program that Not AutoCorp has at My Tesla Winnipeg. They have been the leaders for a good 10 years in electric vehicles. And now with Teslas becoming more and more common on the streets, many people thinking about that move from a traditional vehicle to an electric vehicle. This is the weekend to do it. Get on down to Waverly and McGillivray. If high fuel prices got you down, why not go electric and save $100 to $200 a week, depending on how much you drive, with no gas ever again? Not AutoCorp Tesla event this weekend, Waverly and McGillivray, and you can find out more online at not.ca. Our friends at Royal Sports are ready for the season. Of course, we will get to those retro reverse jerseys that were dropped a little later on today, but whether it's a retro reverse, a heritage, a regular Winnipeg Jets jersey, Royal Sports has it all. And it's not just the Winnipeg Jets, the entire National Hockey League, Winnipeg Blue Bombers gear, all 32 NFL teams represented, not to mention Major League Baseball, NBA, Raptors gear, and a huge selection of Team Canada merchandise as we are back in the World Cup, which begins, I believe, a month from today in Qatar. And of course, they're the hockey superstore for over 40 years, with hockey players working in the shop to help you and the hockey player in your family get the right fit and the right equipment to dominate on the ice this season. Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway, and make sure to check them out online on Instagram, I should say, at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. And had a good chat with our pal Andrew at F Apparel. They're busy right now getting into the, kind of close to the holiday season. But guys, right now, many people already planning for their weddings for next year. And if you are in a wedding party or involved in one, this is the time to get down to F Apparel, book your wedding party suits, and get fitted by the end of November. Everyone in the wedding party will save 10% and get a free shirt, savings of up to $130 per person. And of course, they've also got a great buy one, get one 30% off suit sale right now, with custom suits starting at $400. If you're looking for a big wardrobe refresh, or you're someone that wears a suit on a daily basis for your job, F Apparel has got you covered with the best prices and the best looking custom suits in Winnipeg. Pop down and see them, 190 Smith Street downtown, or online, and you can make an appointment at F, that's EPHapparel.com. All right, Lawman's coming up a little bit later on, but right now let's head to Denver before he gets to Vegas for tonight's tilt between the Jets and Vegas Golden Knights, and welcome in our pal, Wiebe's World himself, Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Wiebe, what's going on?
Great to be with you, Huss. Thanks for the audible. Yes, we got the flight to Vegas and straight to the arena, and should be another fun tilt. This has been an interesting road trip so far, and another stiff test for the Winnipeg Jets on the horizon here.
Listen, 2 points is 2 points, but let's kind of break down the game overall and what we saw last night before we talk about this challenge against the Vegas Golden Knights this evening. Overall, I actually really like the way the Jets played. That being said, you're going up against the Colorado Avalanche, one of the most talented teams in the league, and at some point they are going to take it to you, and they did. The pucks went in the net, but I was impressed with the Jets' resiliency, especially into the third period, hanging on. I mean, the white knuckle ride, it truly was, especially there in that final 10 minutes of the hockey game. And then we'll get to OT and what happened there. But did you see it sort of the same way?
Yeah, Huss, it's interesting. I mean, having been fortunate enough to cover the Avalanche during their Stanley Cup run, you know that this is what they do. I mean, they can crank it up with the best of them in the NHL. They are the gold standard. And yes, there were a couple of shifts where they had the Jets running around on extended shifts, and an inability to clear the puck out of the zone cost them on 2 occasions. But I don't think that in terms of their structure, in terms of what they were giving up, I think they actually did a pretty decent job. Did they generate enough in the third period? Probably not. But that's what happens when you're going against a team that's as high octane and talented as the Colorado Avalanche. In terms of their structural play, I actually didn't mind them. And I thought they kept a decent amount of the shots from the outside. I mean, Connor Hellebuyck had to play very well. But to me, Huss, I think the Jets actually, for the first 34 minutes, actually there were long swaths of the game where they actually dictated the terms of the play. And that's incredibly hard to do against a team like Colorado. So obviously a great start building the 2-0 and 3-1 leads. And did it get a little bit furry for them at the end? Of course. But overall, I would say based on how the Jets played Monday versus Wednesday, to me, it was night and day when it came to the structure, when it came to their forecheck, when it came to their skating ability, and a lot of the things that we had been looking for, Huss, that hadn't happened that much in the first 2 games, were there in spades in Game 3, despite missing Nikolai Ehlers, who was one of their most impactful players.
Well, and speaking of the loss of Ehlers, I mean, what did you think about the way that top line looked? I mean, it was interesting. I mean, we kind of thought that it was Sam Gagner. He was a placeholder, obviously. They did make the move once they knew Ehlers was out, and Mason Appleton, I'll say this, and it wasn't just that line, but Appleton in particularly, and the second line seemed to get the puck into the blue paint and, get some wax, obviously created a little bit of offense as well, but they didn't make it easy for the Colorado Avalanche. And, when the Jets are stagnant, they're kept to the perimeter, and I didn't think that they were caught like that very much, at least when they had the puck in the offensive zone.
Sure, Huss. Jets skated incredibly well. When it comes to Appleton, clearly his best game of the season. I thought he was pretty solid in Game 1. Game 2, their line was a little bit underwhelming, if you will. I thought Appleton was excellent. He was using his speed. He was using his feet. He was getting in on the forecheck. He was winning battles along the wall. And he provided a really solid defensive conscience for that line with Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor. They had a tough matchup for a chunk of the game. I mean, obviously Adam Lowry went up against McKinnon quite regularly, but I mean, the Scheifele line had to go up against them for a fair amount of time as well. I thought they were very good. I thought Appleton was very involved. Obviously, his offense came at 4-on-4 and at 3-on-3 while playing with Adam Lowry. But in terms of Appleton's play, I thought he was excellent. I know that yesterday, the afternoon Twitter machine was rife with controversy on who might move up. But I mean, Scott Arniel did say to members of the media after the morning skate to not read too much into the lines that were used in the morning. Appleton, he stepped up when he needed to and made a couple of really heady plays in the game. The pass to Pionk for the one-timer at 4-on-4 was excellent. And honestly, the seal on McKinnon, Huss, that looks like a normal play in real time or in slow motion, but the ability to time that so perfectly and to be able to get the seal on McKinnon along the wall to not only prevent him from getting possession of the puck, but for virtually taking him out of the play entirely and kicking the puck forward on that 2-on-1 that led to the goal. That was an incredibly astute and smart hockey play. And basically he's doing it against one of the top 5 players in the NHL. He made it look like McKinnon would get the first touch, then he gets the hit on him, and then the Jets transition in offense and get the job done. I mean, we know a lot of people were maybe scratching their heads a little bit when it came to the we always talk about deployment, Huss. Even if it hadn't worked out for the Jets, I mean, I think the deployment shows you that they were, they took a little bit of a defensive mentality, but they end up getting the goal. And that's the thing about strategizing. I mean, the thing for the, coaches sometimes see things differently than the fans and us in the media as well. But, obviously that was like I wrote in Sportsnet.ca, it was a combination of, going with your gut and maybe taking a calculated risk. And that calculated risk or decision paid off for the Winnipeg Jets when Neil Pionk blasted that slapper past Alexander Georgiev.
Well, from my perspective, Ken, I mean, yeah, listen, I, like many people, was like, holy smokes, this is rather unconventional, starting it off with Adam Lowry and Mason Appleton going up against McKinnon and, and Makar. But in retrospect, I mean, obviously it worked, so it looks brilliant right now. I think that they and Scott Arniel was just looking to survive that first shift, going up against those guys. And to be perfectly honest, I don't mind the decision in that particular instance because, I mean, matched up against the top guys on the Winnipeg Jets, those guys had their way quite a bit. I mean, it was some of the non-top line players, I think, that really made a difference last night for the Winnipeg Jets. And listen, if you're worried about getting the second point, you've got one in the bank. The best thing that you can do is survive Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon, and then maybe give your top guys like a Mark Scheifele and a Kyle Connor the chance to win it after that. Ironically, they never got the chance to do it because you mentioned that brilliant play by Appleton springing Pionk and Lowry, and the Pionky-Tonk man goes top shelf, 2 goals, and they got the win.
I was going to say, so there should be a GIF by now or of Pionk with the guitar slamming it over top of the net. Let's see if the creative folks in the chat room can get something going, because I did see there was a funny a picture of Pionk's head on the honky tonk man with the old shake, rattle, and roll outfit from the vintage wrestling days, which I certainly appreciate for sure.
The little general dropped that one out there. Shout out to Eric. That was that absolutely made my night.
Tremendous stuff right there. And let's stay on Pionk for a minute, Huss. I mean, that's the other part too. Sorry, just wrapping up the 3-on-3. I mean, if the Jets are able to survive, and Scott Arniel did say one of the reasons Lowry went out was because he had been so good in the faceoff circle, and possession is such a big part of 3-on-3 that if the Jets had even been able to get possession for the majority of that shift, then you toss over Scheifele and Connor with Josh Morrissey, and you're probably going against no offense, there's lots of great players in the Avalanche, but no better 3 than the ones who were on the ice for that first shift. So there was some, cat and mouse happening there for sure. When it comes to Neil Pionk, Huss, I mean, we've been talking about this for months. The Jets need Neil Pionk to have a bounce back season. His first 2 games, I would say, were kind of mediocre at best. So he needed a big game. I know at 5-on-5, people are looking at the analytics, and I understand why. Like, if you play against McKinnon, chances are pretty good you're going to be getting caved in on the shot attempts meter. That's just the way that it goes. It's hard to drive play against a line like that, especially when they had those 2 extended shifts where they, that led directly to goals. There were tons of opportunities happening there after the possession. But Pionk, not just because he had the 2 goals, Huss, he was very impactful in terms of his assertiveness. He was very aggressive. He was back to the Neil Pionk we saw those first 2 years. making quick reads, hitting and pinning along the boards. He doesn't have to look for the big booming hit that's going to try to knock a guy out in open ice, but his ability to seal off plays along the wall, his puck movement was better. I thought that he looked, there are going to be time required. There's going to be time required for the pairings to settle in. Josh has spent the majority of the last year and change, almost 2 years, playing with Dylan DeMello. Yes, there was a stretch with Nate Schmidt, but Pionk and Morrissey have not played together for extended stretches of time. So they're going to enjoy playing with one another, but it's going to take some time to get the reads. And it's not exactly an easy testing ground when you're being asked to go up against that McKinnon line. I mean, that's one of the toughest assignments in hockey. And yes, that assignment was shared with Brendan Dillon and Nate Schmidt, who I also, I've been pounding the drum for this pairing for a long time. And I thought they were excellent in the game as well. And obviously the other change on the back end saw Dylan Samberg step in, play 15-25 of smart hockey with Dylan DeMello, and did exactly what a guy who is in a competition needs to do. Make a bunch of smart, subtle plays, don't get noticed on the bad end of a highlight reel goal, and just played a steady game. I thought he was also a little bit more assertive in the game as well.
Well, for sure. And let's talk about Samberg, because that was one of the big stories going into last night. There it is. The Pionky Tonk Man, for those of you watching with us on YouTube. Lars, the little General 04. Give him a follow just for that.
We need a guitar in that thing. I mean, it's almost perfect. It's like, that's like a 95% or 98 percentile. We need a top 2%er gets the guitar in that shot.
No doubt about it. But as far as Samberg goes, I mean, we talked yesterday about what a big opportunity this was, and almost, the biggest test you could have going up against a team like the Avalanche. And I got to be honest, Ken, I thought he passed with flying colors. He looked confident out there. He was composed, played a significant amount of time against a great team, and, did not really have any major struggles. To me, this was a huge step forward for Dylan Samberg, grabbing that 6th spot and becoming a regular, as opposed to having it be a decision as to who's in game after game.
Yeah, for sure, Huss. I mean, that was an important step in the process for sure. I mean, obviously, we know the competition doesn't end after one game, just like it didn't end after 6 or preseason games or exhibition games. But that was definitely the type of game that puts you ahead of the jockeying for position. I thought Samberg was really composed, as you mentioned. Playing with Dylan DeMello, he has been a guy who, prior to being, reconnected with Josh Morrissey, had handled that role. I mean, Logan Stanley played his best hockey alongside Dylan DeMello. I mean, he's been a guy who's been a bit of a stabilizing force for a lot of the pairings that he's been on. So I like the way the pairings shook out. I would expect the same sort of deal against the Vegas Golden Knights, and I'd like to see them stick with these pairings for a while and see how things get worked out on those fronts. The thing is, Huss, when you're a young guy like Samberg, you can't constantly be looking over your shoulder, but you also can't afford to be a one good, one bad, one good, one bad. I mean, now it's all about stacking that type of effort on a regular and consistent basis. That's how he will win that battle for the 6th job. I don't know if you heard it, but Jared Bednar was talking about this when he was being asked about the 4th line changes after the morning skate on Wednesday. He said, guys can come in and play well for small stretches and really give you everything that they possibly have. But you're not looking for guys to just hold down ice time or take minutes up. You need guys that can make an impact on the game. And I actually think that Dylan Samberg did make an impact on the game, even though there isn't the type of flash and dash necessarily, but it's the smart, subtle exits and the really smart plays, the good reads. Clearing out the front of the net is something the Jets didn't do very well, didn't do a very good job at against the Dallas Stars. I thought that they did a good job of impeding the Colorado Avalanche from getting to the paint for 2nd and 3rd and 4th opportunities. There weren't a ton of point screen shots that got through like we saw against Dallas with the 2 goals there from Heiskanen and Hakanpää. So I think that was a major step forward for the collective group on the Jets back end, and Dylan Samberg obviously had an impact on those fronts as well.
Ken Wiebe of Sportsnet with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily, following up the Jets 4-3 OT win in Colorado and getting ready for tonight's late night tilt in Vegas against the Golden Knights. Ken, I I think we got to talk about the psyche of this team for a minute. And, like many people, and I mean, like I make a point of staying off Twitter because the doom and gloom every time, a couple bad shifts goes is just so over the top. I mean, you knew this was a big, big test. Last year, they were up 3-0 after 3 and got absolutely pasted for the remaining of the 40 minutes. I think it ended up 6-3 or 7-3. This one had the potential of going that way. The way they played and the way they held on in the third period and getting that 2 points, how big is that for the collective psyche of the Winnipeg Jets early in this season to win a game like that, to be honest, they probably haven't won for the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think Paul Edmonds had the stat. I think the Jets had lost 8 of 9 in Colorado going into the game on Wednesday night. So, Huss, it was definitely poised for the Wile E. Coyote steamroller right over top, where he goes into the cement and drops down. That was definitely something that some folks who were watching were probably pondering and wondering if that was going to happen once again. But the Jets showed some steely resolve, and I mean, I'm with you. I mean, I think early in the season, we're always looking for the smallest clues and wanting to turn them into the biggest things. Just like a lot of people thought, oh, well, now they played terrible in Dallas. Now back to the drawing board. They'll never get this figured out. I mean, we're going to need a wider lens to look through this, whether it's 10 games, 20 games. We'll see in terms of how they're picking up the systems. But Huss, if you can go stand in the middle of the ring and go toe-to-toe with the heavyweights of the NHL, like the Jets are being asked to do in their first, some of the heavyweights in the first 5 games, yes, it can certainly help and pay some dividends down the road. It's one of those things where you always go back to the memory bank, right? So when you go to the memory bank, you're right. A lot of people, if they were thinking about last year in that dressing room after one period or after the second period, you might have been tempted to think, oh boy, well, this is going to turn into a 6-3 affair in a snap of a finger. The fact that the Jets were able to stay within their structure and manage to hang on, I think is important for them. I mean, I don't think we're always looking at measuring sticks. I don't consider yesterday to be a statement game. I think it's too early for statements, but it is something that can help the Jets down the road. If you see them do that with a little bit more regularity, I would say it's more of a foundational game than a statement game to me. It's part of the pouring of the concrete for the 4 pillars, Huss. That's an important pillar to pour. Easy for you to say, but you know what I mean? Like that's an important step in the foundation building for a group that is looking to lay down a much more solid foundation than we've seen in the last couple of seasons.
Pouring of the concrete. That is, I mean, that is just wonderful stuff, Kenny. Well, listen, can they crank out the cement mixer and pour a little bit more tonight? I think anybody, any Jets fan looking at this schedule with back-to-back games against Colorado and then in Vegas would have probably happily taken a split. But now that they've got the 2 points, a little bit of a good mojo, probably some real excitement in that room. Early in the season, they haven't played a ton of hockey. What do you make of this challenge tonight? And can they get greedy and maybe mine another couple points out of the desert?
Well, it makes sense that I use the concrete theme going over to Vegas, right? I mean, a lot of construction has been happening in Vegas, especially with the Legion Stadium going up the last couple of years here. That beautiful multi-billion-dollar facility in Sin City. It's an important game too. I mean, what's left in the tank? I think obviously what we saw yesterday, another one of those developments, Huss. Fourth line's on the ice with just over a minute left in a tie game. I mean, they didn't have a ton of ice time during the game, but Axel Jonsson-Fjallby was out on the ice with, I think, 1:06 their shift started. I mean, that line survived. I thought David Gustafsson was steady again.
Well, they got put out right after the Avalanche tied the game up at 3 as well, and I thought had a good shift. And that sort of confidence in a fourth line. And it's something that I think good teams do. They play all their players. They don't just lean on one or two lines. And listen, as I said, they probably could go. There was penalties. There was penalty killing PK, which probably hampered some of their 5-on-5 ice time. But you mentioned the situations that those players were given the opportunity to go out and the way that they handled those situations, I think bodes very well for the fourth line and the team and the confidence that the coaching staff early on is putting into all members of the roster.
Yeah, and my point being there, Huss, that fourth line's going to have to play more today because they were under 8 minutes as a collective. They're going to need to play. They're going to have to give the Jets some early shifts. Those guys are going to have probably a little bit, fresher legs than some of the other top-end guys that had the heavier minutes yesterday. But I think the other development, Huss, that we need to discuss quickly, the play of that second line. I mean, that's the best game they played by a long shot out of the first three. Cole Perfetti, that may have been his best game as a Jet. Scott O'Neill referenced it as saying he thought it was the best game he has seen Cole play. And, having watched many of Cole's games myself, or all of them, I do agree. I think it was his best game. And you know what? I think it was important for Cole Perfetti to have that kind of a game because he struggled with the pace against Dallas on Monday. He got hit again from behind, a tough hit. I didn't think he was skating all that well, but he got his legs going in the game early. And again, this is not a criticism of Cole Perfetti. There are going to be lots of nights as a 20-year-old when you don't have your A set of wheels with you when you start the hockey game. Yesterday, he was ready right out of the gate. He made that exceptional cross-ice pass to Sam Gagner, who got it over to Lowry, got it back, batted it in for that important second unit power play marker that kind of got the Jets going. And then Perfetti shows the finishing ability. And what a pass by Wheeler.
Oh, wow.
His subtle ability to freeze the netminder and get it over. I mean, you're not going to get an easier goal. I mean, the net is like virtually the cage is yawning, as they like to say. Perfetti doing a nice job to bury it. I know he didn't hit it fully, but he did the job. He got it in.
That's how good the pass was. You could fan on it and it was still going in the net.
Exactly. And Huss, for Perfetti, it's so important because we know last year when he came up for the second time and he was playing with Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor, he was generating a lot of opportunities for himself and his line mates, but the production wasn't there. So now you go into game 3, you get a multi-point game, you're skating really well, and now you're feeling a lot of, like you said before, that mojo. You're feeling good almost every time you get on the ice. Obviously, Pierre-Luc Dubois, again, was in one of those games where he was engaged, drawing penalties, taking penalties, coincidental minors.
How about the double holding? When was the last time there was a double holding?
I would say the odds of that were very slim. We'd have to go deep into the archives for some historical films to pull out the last time we saw that, Huss. But
what are you calling that?
Again, great effort by that second line on a night where we know the Scheifele line had a tough matchup for a good chunk of it against McKinnon. So important for that line to step up. Huss, everything we talked about after game 2 on our post-game show. No offense from the blue line. Pionk scores twice. Almost no secondary scoring. Well, the second line still is primary scoring, but you get my point. The top line handling of the scoring through the first 2 games. Second line has their best game. Neil Pionk scores twice. Yes, Mason Appleton was playing on the top line, but both of his points came while playing with Adam Lowry. So I think there was a complementary scoring element on both of those goals. And the other thing, too, the structure is the most important part. We've been talking all week, and Rick Bowness is tired of talking about it, even though he wasn't there. Scott O'Neill knows we've been bringing up the past and, people reverting into old habits. But I loved what O'Neill said after the morning skate, Huss. I mean, even though the Jets were pretty good during the preseason, they knew there was – this is an 82-game process, Huss, to get your systems implemented and locked down. 6 exhibition games was never going to be enough to turn the Jets into a leaky defensive team, into a defensive juggernaut. So the fact that they are taking some strides, I would say would be encouraging for them, for the coaching staff, for the players. But back to your original point, I mean, the reason why yesterday is important for the Jets is because they didn't revert to bad habits. They stuck to what they're trying to do. Their forwards were covering high as the defense were getting involved. And they didn't really get running around other than those 2 extended shifts that led directly to goals.
Yeah, and listen, credit where credit's due. Connor Hellebuck had another big game, and you almost sort of take him for granted at times. And, while the third period, I thought they did a pretty good job of maintaining their structure and holding on. There was a couple. I mean, there was that one point-blank shot. I can't remember who got it out from the back. That was probably their best chance. Had it, got it through. And listen, in the past, and I know not to go back to other years, I mean, often one of those have gone in when it seems like everything is caving in on the Winnipeg Jets, and that did not happen last night. And he, of course, was a big part of it. I want to get back to Perfetti, though, for a minute, because I'm going to be very interested to see him tonight. It's pretty clear that, the opposition so far this season has been really trying to test Cole Perfetti physically. They've been trying to hit him. They've been giving him a few little extra whacks and, just testing how tough that he is. I thought that he acquitted himself really well last night in the game. I mean, with some of those battles that maybe he'd had a tough time in before. But I think that this challenge tonight against Vegas in particular is going to be, maybe moving up a weight class, if you will, as far as the physicality and what he's going to need to handle. And obviously, I think it's part of the reason why you got Wheeler and especially Dubois on his line. But how important is it for Cole Perfetti to get used to the physical attention that he's going to be getting on a daily basis right now if he's going to be a regular in the top 6 for the Winnipeg Jets?
Yeah, for sure, Hassan. When you're in that role, you're playing against a lot of guys who are physical. It was Josh Manson, I think, who got him along the wall there. That was in the Wednesday game. A really good hit, but Perfetti popped right back up, Huss. I think one thing about Perfetti today that will kind of be a benefit to him is all those 3-and-3s that he played as a member of the Manitoba Moose. Yes, back-to-backs are taxing and hard on the body, but because he was able to go through that as a young player, I think that will help him as he gets set for the stretch of back-to-backs where the Jets have a couple here in the next, this week and next. So I think, obviously Cole's going to need to get into a position where he's not getting hit as hard as often, but this is a guy who's not afraid to take a hit to make a play. And that's a very important quality as well when you're playing with those skilled players on the top 6, because if that defenseman is coming up at you and kind of pinching at the offensive blue line or at the defensive blue line, if you get the puck past him, it's going to be an odd man rush. So sometimes defensemen are going to have to weigh the, risk reward balance when it comes to trying to go and throw that big hit, whether it's on Perfetti or Wheeler or anybody else who's out there. But I think Perfetti's handling it pretty well. Again, if you're the Jets, do you want him getting hit hard once a game? Of course not. But I think this is something that, it's a fast game. Perfetti still has only, that's 3 games, 5 preseason. And the games at the Young Stars, I mean, he hasn't played a ton of hockey still since February. So I think he's getting that adjustment down. And I don't expect Perfetti to be getting hit hard with regularity as the season rolls on here. Yes, he's going to be getting attention because he's playing in the top 6, but I don't think he's going to be putting himself in a position where he's going to be, risking injury by getting hit constantly.
Ken, again,
he's too smart. He's too smart.
Well, exactly. I mean, and using that noggin to keep himself out of dangerous situations, and obviously move the puck and put it into spots where they can score is his bread and butter, and look good so far. Again, we're very early in the season, and we don't have a lot to work on. But I am interested in your thoughts. First of all, on that third line, was that the biggest line the Jets have ever thrown out there with Lowry, Barron, and Menelainen? And what have you seen from Menelainen? We talked a lot about him in the preseason. Now that things are for real, how have you liked his game coming back to the NHL?
Yeah, Huss, I mean, we were talking about that on Press Row yesterday. I'm pretty sure that must have been, it's certainly the tallest in terms of height. Maybe there might have been a weight. I think Thorburn, Slater, and Tanner Glass, I don't think that the weight would have blown them away. Obviously, Thorburn was a big,
maybe when
big,
Buff was
guy.
playing forward, depending on who he was up, he can sort of even that out quite quickly.
Yeah, fair point by you there. But I liked a lot of what we saw from that line. I've liked Menelainen from the very beginning. And this is something, I mean, the Jets have a couple of players where you're trying to figure out what they're fully going to be capable of. Morgan Barron, I thought, had a steady game. But again, is he a physical guy? Is he going to be a guy that scores? Is he going to be an 8-goal scorer or a 15-goal scorer? I think it's still too early to figure that out. I think he's also settling into his game. We know what Lowry brings. That third line is, going to have to contribute a little bit more offensively. But, when you're going up against one of the top offensive teams in the league, you're not always going to be asked to score. So to me, Menelainen has shown exactly what we've seen from the first time. Huss, you were standing beside me when I saw Menelainen for the first time. This guy can move. He's a big body. He's physical. He can kill penalties, and he gives you an excellent effort. And I think there's some skill. You can see the skill on display. But again, this is a guy who's getting comfortable at the NHL level. I expect him to be able to contribute a little bit more offense, but I've liked a lot of his game. He brings an element the Jets don't have a ton of. Everyone thinks, the Jets are this big physical team like they were in 2018 or even 2015 when they got swept by Anaheim. That's not what the Jets are. They've got a couple guys who can throw big hits. but they're not a big physical team that wears you down. But a guy like Menelainen, playing especially with a guy like Lowry and a bigger guy like Barron, they can wear an opposition down, even if they're not running you through the end boards, because they can make life difficult on them because of their skating ability and ability to get on pucks and forecheck ferociously, a la Matthew Perreault style.
Kenny, before we go, I mean, this has been such a weird start to the season. I mean, certainly losing Nikolai Ehlers was somewhat unexpected, but the loss of the head coach. I mean, we still haven't seen Rick Bowness on the bench. We know that he's been watching all the games, and we hope that he's feeling much better, and we'll see him on the bench on Saturday night when the Jets host the Maple Leafs. But what do you think Rick Bowness was thinking? What would have Rick's takeaways been of that game last night? And what do you think he's texting or FaceTiming with Arnie today ahead of tonight's tilt with the Knights?
Yeah, Scott Arniel, when I think we was asked about the defense pairings, he said, well, there was a guy at home that watched the game 3 times and he wanted to make a few changes. So I would imagine that, it's obviously very difficult for Rick Bowness. I mean, he's a guy who, would have been so excited for A, the return behind the bench in Winnipeg, B, game 2 being in Dallas. I mean, the schedule maker, couldn't have drawn it up any better, basically. But I mean, here we go, Huss. I mean, he's 67 years old. You got to take care of your health first. And, you would have had a flight to Denver, then a flight to Vegas, then a flight home. I think it's a smart move. You don't want to be getting worn down early in the season. We know Rick has an enormous amount of energy and an abundance of energy. And I think that, being behind the bench for your first home game back in Jets Point 2.0 against the Toronto Maple Leafs on a Saturday night, on Hockey Night in Canada, I mean, he would have preferred to be behind the bench on the first 4, but it's a pretty big stage to be stepping onto. He's been involved, in the Zoom meetings, in the decision-making, and he'll be very excited to be back behind the bench. What would you thought about yesterday? I think he would have thought there were a lot of strides taken, especially considering how the Jets played against Dallas. But again, now the coach is thinking, what's going to happen in the next night? I mean, the one thing about the schedule is that would have been a game where if you're a coach, I mean, the Jets have had a couple of extended breaks already, right? They had a week between the exhibition and the opener. Then they had 2 games between games 1 and 2. That's a game where you feel good and you don't mind sitting around because you have all those good things that you can look at. But early in the year, even Jared Bednar was saying the same thing. The Avalanche were 2-1 going into the game, and he had lots of things that he'd like to correct. So the correction phase is going to be ongoing, but Rick Bowness would have to be thrilled with the way the Jets responded. And now he's going to hope that they stack another one in Vegas, where we expect to see David Riddick between the pipes. We won't know about Nikolai Ehlers till around 6:30-ish Central Time. Brad Lauer scheduled to meet with the media in Vegas. So we'll be firing that up on the old Twitter machine once things get settled down at T-Mobile Arena. Yeah, we have a chance to say hello to our friends, the Lawman and Shane Knighty.
Yes, indeed. Lawman coming up a little later on in the program. Always fun to catch up with Gary. Hey, just before we go, how relieved were you to be doing Kenny and Rennie without a full rehearsal for a game production for a hockey team the next day, or a complete arena changeover? You've dealt with a lot early in the season, Ken.
Us a lot of early adversity for the Kenny and Rennie show. There's no doubt about that. But battled through, found a way to keep it a little more stable. It was good to be in the same building as Sean. That's for sure. We were on different sides of the rink. It was very nice. The Zamboni got done early. There was no leaf blower. There was no audio that I had to try to battle through. Didn't have to mute my microphone, I think, at all during the hour that we were on. We're excited about having everybody with us, and it's been a fun start to the year so far. And that's the beauty. Game 4 of 82, and then see what happens. But there's been a lot of great engagement on your show, on our show, on all the shows on these platforms. One thing we know about Jets fans, they're very passionate, and they're not afraid to give their opinion, whether it's a flaming hot take or a measured one.
Oh, tons of measured ones these days for sure, Ken. Hey, great stuff. Travel safe. Enjoy this game tonight, and we'll look forward to a little late night, or I guess it'll technically be early morning K&R tonight in Winnipeg after the Jets take on the Golden Knights, and we'll see you back at the rink for a big one on Saturday.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Huss. Fun weekend ahead, that's for sure.
All right, great stuff with Wiebe on his way to Vegas for tonight's tilt with the Vegas Golden Knights. We're going to head to Sin City in just a minute and hook up with our pal Gary Lawless. Really looking forward to that. Before we do that, of course, slow day for the Bombers, but a busy week for the Bombers, getting Zach Calero signed. We'll see if there's any more to the Justin Dunk report on Willie Jefferson working on an extension. But all eyes on the Bombers' final regular season game on the 28th, and of course, the West final on November 13th. Princess Auto Tailgate Zone, the place to be before the game. $5 beers, $3.50 pop and hot dogs, DJ Finesse spinning, and the best atmosphere outside of a stadium in the Canadian Football League. Of course, Princess Auto, great sponsors of ours, and the place where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Check them out at one of 2 Winnipeg locations, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, or shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Our friends at Culligan Water, kind of perfect that we've just had the most hydrated man in sports media, Ken Wiebe, join us. And of course, Kenny, big Culligan guy, I'm sure, because Culligan has been the water experts in Winnipeg, family owned and doing it for over 65 years with water softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, whole home systems, and drinking water systems, not to mention citywide water delivery services and commercial and industrial water products and solutions. Culligan Water, they're at 1200 Sargent Avenue, 694-5180. You can check out all their products and services online at drinkculligan.com. Well, all you whiskey lovers, heads up on this one, folks. The last couple of years, we've had the pleasure of working with our friends at Canadian Club on the Canadian Club Chronicles series. And coming up early next month, will be the official release of the 5th and final release in the CC Chronicles series, the Canadian Club 45-year-old, which will be dropping at the Spirits of Distinction release that Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries hosts every November. Only 80 bottles available in the market, so keep your eyes out on that. And listen, if you're popping by your local beer store, don't forget that CC and Ginger ready to drink in cans is available in 6-packs at your local beer store. And of course, all the great Canadian Club products available at your Manitoba Liquor Marts. Canadian Club, official sponsor of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And just before we go to Vegas to bring in the lawman, of course, we do have Thursday night football tonight. Interesting game between the 2-4 Cards, 2-4 Saints tonight, and then Jets Golden Knights. No better place to make a night of it than your local Boston Pizza. And while you're there, you'll have an opportunity to enter to win a trip or two to Vegas to see the Raiders play and a bonus Golden Knights game. First trip, November 11th to 13th. Second trip, New Year's Eve weekend. Watch the NFL and enter to win at all Winnipeg, Portage, Selkirk, Morden, and Steinbach Boston Pizza locations. All right. Spent a lot of time talking about the win last night. Right back at it tonight. We're expecting Big Save Dave to get his first start for the Winnipeg Jets. But let's check in on the Golden Knights and our good friend Gary Lawless. Lawman, what's going on, man? Great to have you back on the program.
Why are you at the doctor's office?
The doctor's office?
Yeah,
you think they've got a Mortal Kombat?
It looks like you're in the lobby of a doctor's office there. With the
No, definitely not. I wish a doctor's office had NBA Jam and Mortal Kombat in the back. That would be make the entire process a little bit more fun.
I want a bottle of that 45-year-old CC.
Yeah, I know you do. I think everyone does. That's well, you're a bit. I mean, 45. We did have the 42 and the 43, I think. And I think last year we did a promo with them on a bottle of the 44, which was just an unbelievable one. This is the final one of the series. And how is the high life in Vegas before we get to this game right now? What still running with the top floor penthouse operation?
Things are good here. It's been interesting off season, and Dave Gosher is upset. I don't have headphones that fit into this computer, so I have to just I have to do it live. And the voice of the Golden Knights, Dave Gosher, is not happy about it. But then Shane Knighty says I should be using Bluetooth. I'm getting hassled, Hustler. We better move on to some good topics here.
Say what's up to the fellas. Great to see that, and we'll look forward to the game this evening. Well, our entire focus around Winnipeg for the last month of training camp and the preseason has been Rick Bowness, the new sheriff in town, what he's trying to do. Tell us what life after Pete is like and what Bruce Cassidy's brought to the organization.
Well, Bruce's accountability is kind of the word we've heard from the players right from the very beginning, and he hasn't been shy. There's been a couple of big-name veterans, Marchessault and Kessel. They've both been parked at certain situations if he didn't like the way they were handling the defensive end of their game or puck management. So it's play Bruce's way or don't play seems to be a big part of what he's brought so far. System-wise, he's changed some things, but their players are still kind of working their way through that. I think they're getting closer to having that down pat, and that will – I think there were some mistakes that occurred in the last game as a result of some system wrinkles kind of rearing their ugly head, but that'll get worked out real quick.
Listen, it was a disappointing season, an unexpected one for the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, there was a lot of navel gazing around here in Winnipeg and expected big changes. Many of them that didn't happen, but so much has been about the coach. And, obviously we'll get to the Jets in a bit, but over the course of the summer with the hiring of Cassidy and considering the injuries and everything that the team went through last year, I mean, what were the big stories outside of just the obvious having a new bench boss around the Golden Knights coming into puck drop for the season?
Well, I think health, you know what I mean? Like Robin Leonard is not going to play this year, but everybody else is back and healthy. And Mark Stone only played in 37 games last year. Jack Eichel only played in 34. Alec Martinez missed a ton of hockey last year, and it just that list just went on and on and on and on. So the fact that they had all that time to get healthy, big storyline for them. Also, everybody. Mark Stone said that when he went back to Canada for the summer, everybody walked up to him and told him, "You guys stink, and you're not going to be a playoff team next year." And he just sort of said, "That's fine." He goes, "We're going to use that for our own fuel." And I think that the other big thing here is the attitude is that this team is they're hungrier than they have been in the last couple of years. I don't think you're ever going to duplicate what you had in year one, but this seems to be a different attitude amongst this group than a better one than they've had the last couple of years. It's really positive in there. It seems to be the group is having fun playing with one another. They're 3-1. That'll help as well when you're winning. But so far, it's been a real pleasure actually to be around the group. They seem to be in a real fine mindset.
Well, you mentioned, excuse me, Gary, you mentioned Mark Stone. And I mean, I don't think there was a more impactful injury to the Vegas Golden Knights. And you could argue maybe in the league last year than the loss of Stone. But, when you're dealing with back injuries and what he went through, the work that was done on him, you're always wondering how he will bounce back from it. What have the early results been for the Manitoba native?
He's looked good. I think that I don't know how much time he was able to spend on his conditioning. I think that might be a little bit of a factor for him early on. He's probably got to get his legs really strong underneath him. But he looks, in a lot of ways, he looks like the old Mark Stone. He's getting around the ice way better. He's, he's got his hockey mind is so good. He can think the game better than most, but you've got to physically be able to get to those spots. And I think we're seeing that. He's taken away a lot of pucks, which is something he didn't do very much of last year.
You mentioned having fun. I had to laugh at some of the things that your social media team put out in and around Phil Kessel's birthday. He had the hot dog cake and yucking it up. I mean, tell us about Kessel's arrival. And, as far as what we think, I mean, we're seeing him right up there on the top line with Jack Eichel, who I think has a lot to prove in his first full season. Pretty interesting combination considering where those guys were a year ago.
Yeah, well, Kessel, he signed there in Arizona to play for Rick Tocchet, and I think that was a good fit. But just they got really bad really fast, and I think it was really hard for him to play in a situation where just like they weren't competitive ever. They were one of the worst teams in the NHL, and they're headed that way again this year. Although now it's to plan. they are trying to be. They're taking a full-blown dive trying to get to Connor Bedard. So I don't think it was fun for Phil in Arizona. I think it's been fun for him here, and he's been. Bruce Cassidy said the other day that they showed Phil on their clips as good things he'd done defensively. They were showing the rest of the team. He hasn't shot the puck very much, and I think he's only got 1 assist so far. So he's going to want to start to produce pretty soon, playing on a line with Jack Eichel and Riley Smith.
Gary, one thing that's been a constant ever since the Vegas Golden Knights came into the league was a bunch of Manitoba content, starting, of course, with Kelly McCrimmon, never mind the media. It looks like Keegan Colasar still playing a role, and Brett Howden, getting a real great opportunity. Fill us in on where those two young men are at, and in particular, the opportunity for Howden, where he's in the lineup right now.
Yeah, well, we'll do the fourth line and Colasar. They've played to their identity so far. They've been very good. Colasar already has a goal, but there's no mistaking what their plan is. As soon as they get the puck and they get to the red line, they're starting to look for a good place to place it so that they can go and get behind the D and rattle some bones and try and establish their forecheck and take the puck to the net. And they've done a really good job of that so far. Brett Howden is fascinating. He's a lot bigger than I think people realize he is, and he can skate. And he's done a nice job on that line with Stone and Stevenson, all three of them from the Western Hockey League. It's kind of an interesting mix. Stone played minor hockey with Howden's older brother, and Stevenson says about Stone that he's never been more comfortable with any other player his entire life, and that includes his own brother, who he played all his minor hockey with. So there's a lot of chemistry kind of baked in to those three guys, and they've been good so far. Brett has got whether or not he can slow things down, with the puck in the offensive zone and not rush things and start to capitalize on a lot of the opportunities he's going to get. He scored the other night against Calgary on a tip. That's the big thing to look for from him, because he's playing with, Stevenson has really developed into a top 6D, and Stone is certainly a guy who can distribute the puck.
Can't forget about Zach Whitecloud, who has been one of the great stories in the league the last little while. He's playing, it looks like, with Nick Hague, and that blue line overall, when healthy, really right up there with the top units 1 to 6 in the league. But fill us in on how the former MJHL player is doing now that he's got his contract, and he really is an established everyday NHL defenseman.
Yeah, Zach is really underrated. Him and Hague, they played together in Chicago in the American League, and they've been mostly paired together during their time in the NHL. Hague played for a while with Pietrangelo, but they've got them back. And when Hague just signed a contract, he missed training camp, but he's starting to round into form. They're big, they're physical, they can both skate. If that's the bottom pair, and I hesitate to call them that because I don't see them as – I see them both as kind of 4-5s right now at this stage in their career rather than just a 5-6. But, they can really do a job on other teams when they put their bottom 6 players out against them. So good things from two really young players.
Well, we talked about the Manitoba guys in the lineup for the Knights. I have to ask you, it's really sad. The amount of injuries that Nolan Patrick's dealt with. But what's the outlook for Patrick right now? Is that pretty much he won't play this season? And how concerned are everyone around him in the Knights about his hockey career going forward?
Yeah, I have nothing to report on that. They have not. There hasn't been any talk about Nolan at all, and I think hopefully he's able to, have good health just as a civilian, let alone as a hockey player. That's the first and most important thing, and that's certainly that's what you hope for Nolan right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Gary Lawless, Vegas Golden Knights insider, with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. I know you mentioned that you saw the game last night. What you thought about the Jets so far this season and that 2 points they escaped Colorado with last night?
Well, they still have a great forward group. You start with Connor Scheifele, Perfetti, Wheeler, Dubois. Some Ehlers is hurt right now, but that top six, that's as good as it gets. They can, they're big, they're fast, they can play any way you want to play. They're dangerous. I think Chevy took some heat for not doing much this summer, but what did you want them to do? They've got lots of good players, one of the best goalies in the NHL. I'll be surprised if they're not a playoff team.
Well, and you know what? I mean, we've talked a lot about Rick Bowness, and I mean, unfortunately, of course, Bones won't be on the bench tonight, and is waiting till Saturday, presumably, to make his debut after being out with COVID. But Cassidy with you guys in Vegas, Pete DeBoer down in Dallas, Paul Maurice in Florida, a lot of really good, strong teams with new coaches and new outlooks, but with that comes a lot of pressure as well.
Well, Rick Bowness and Scott Arniel, that's the big change in Winnipeg, right? And what effect they can have on this team. And, Rick obviously taking the C off Blake Wheeler's jersey before training camp started, a pretty big indication that he's going to do things his way. And, at his age, I mean, he's not worried about his next job. He's going to coach. He's going to be who he is. And I think that's a really good thing for the Jets. And I think the combination of him and Arniel is Scott maybe a little bit more of a tactician than Bones, and Bones a real good motivator. I think that's a good tandem.
I don't know if you caught OT last night, but speaking of tactics, listen, that top line of Colorado was so deadly. And I mean, they really did have their way more often than not up against the Jets top line. Ernie throws out Lowry and Appleton along with Pionk in the 3-on-3. Appleton makes a great defensive play, and 15 seconds later, Neil Pionk's blasting it to the back of the net. Not something you see very often, but against a team like Colorado, I sort of see the logic behind it, and certainly it made him look like a genius when they won it on the first shift of OT.
Yeah, well, maybe he's thinking that he's going to use those guys to kill time until Colorado's best guys are off, and then try and win it with Wheeler and Scheifele or whoever on the second or third shift. I'm not sure. I don't know. I looked at it and I was like, "What are you doing, Arnie?" And then all of a sudden the puck was in the net, and Scott was smiling, and that's like 2 wins now for him he went a decade without getting a win as a head coach in the National Hockey League. You have to be happy for him. That's a pretty good story.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Gary Lawless with us now. Gary, I have to ask you, what is this? How is it rubbing shoulders with your good, close personal friends, the Blue Man Group, the other day? It seems like more wacky things are happening around your set on a daily basis right now when I tune into Knights games.
Yeah, tonight, the reverse retro jersey, they're going to feature it in our pregame show. Resorts World has like 100,000 square foot, basically the whole front of the hotel is a video board. And they're gonna put the Vegas reverse retro, the new jersey, up on that video board before the game, and we'll have a camera there. That'll be pretty cool. I was just sitting there minding my own business, and the Blue Man Group, those guys were sitting there, and they're often in the building, and I just kind of said, "Hey, there's the Blue Man Group," and then they just stood up and walked on set. I did not know that was going to happen. I think Millard knew, but it's scary because they're covered in that blue grease paint, and everything that touches it, it smudges on it. And I had a new costume on, Hustler, right out of the wrapper, and I was worried about getting paint on it. I kept telling the guy, "Don't touch me." It was a little unnerving, but it was fun nonetheless.
Well, it's hilarious. And the other thing that I noticed on that clip was you waving your way through a mob of fans, shaking hands, kissing babies, signing autographs. The Lawless brand has really taken over Sin City, hasn't it?
No, not really. I was the extra behind our TV play-by-play team of Dave Gosher and Shane Neidy. They were really getting the attention. Shane had on Shane delivered with a pretty good costume. He had a special jacket made up for the event. We call it the gold carpet in Vegas. And I was just the extra, but fun to do it. And I'm always surprised when someone knows my name. So it was fun to do it for sure.
Lawman, got to ask you quickly about the Pacific Division. Certainly, we expect the Vegas Golden Knights to be back contending for the top of that division. And then you've got those two teams in Alberta. And Edmonton added a goaltender. They already had Draisaitl and obviously Connor McDavid. The Calgary offseason was as fascinating as any I can remember in the National Hockey League in a long time. You know, it served up that turd sandwich by Gaudreau and then Tkachuk and turning that into Mackenzie Weegar, Jonathan Huberdeau, signing them to 8-year deals before they even play a game with the Flames and then getting Kadri. From your perspective, fill us in on that hierarchy and the battle within the Pacific Division. And are those the top 3 teams, and who is next?
Well, I think those are the 3 top teams. The interesting thing in Calgary for me is, so Calgary, they lost. Monahan left, Gaudreau, and Tkachuk. And then in comes Weegar, Kadri, and Huberdeau. And Monahan was already kind of like on his own island with where Daryl Sutter was concerned. He was no longer a factor. So, like, did Calgary did somehow Brad Treliving make his team better? They're certainly better at center ice. Probably not as good on the wing, but better on the blue line as well with the addition of Weegar. That's a pretty good pairing, Weegar and Tanev, that they roll out for their. And then that Anderson is maybe their best defenseman, Rasmus Anderson. He's really good as well. So they handled Vegas pretty well the other night. Vegas was up 2-0, took 6 consecutive minors in the second period. Flames tied it up with 2 power play goals, and then the Flames took over in the third. The game was on the line, and they showed up and played winning hockey and took the 2 points. Who comes after those teams? You know, I'm not too sure. LA, I guess, is probably the best of that group. Vancouver, they might fire everybody before the week's out. They're panicking already, which is kind of bizarre to me. I can't believe, like, they want to fire Lindy Ruff in New Jersey in the first week. They want to fire Boudreau in the first week in Vancouver. Like, is Dean Evison in trouble in Minnesota as well? Like, it's kind of
Sheldon
crazy.
Keefe too, lost at home to Arizona, blow everybody up.
Yeah,
it has been some interesting stories around.
11,
the National
there's been 11 multi-goal leads have been blown already in the NHL.
Half of them by Vancouver.
Yeah, four of them by Vancouver. The other interesting thing, scoring is up through 58 games. Last year, scoring was 5.9 goals per game. It's 6.6 right now. That's an interesting trend. Penalties are up a little bit as well through the first 58 games. So it's been fun to watch the hockey. I watched the Jets game, and then I flipped it over to TNT last night and watched that show. I watched the Blues and the Kraken, and that was a fun game too.
You got it. All right, Lawman, before we go, you, of course, are everyone in Winnipeg's favorite go-to guy for Las Vegas. Now, it is unfortunate that the Jets, both of these games against the Knights, are in the first month of the season. But for folks that are coming down in a couple weeks.
I thought you were going to ask me a Blue Bomber question, but I'll take the Vegas question first.
Okay, we'll hit on the Bombers before the end. But just quickly, for folks that are heading there maybe in a couple weeks for that second game of the season, give us a Gary Lawless approved restaurant and maybe some sort of exciting new attraction that a lot of people are talking about. Be our tour guide for people that are coming down.
We'll start with the exciting attraction. There is a new band in Vegas, Double Minor is what they're called. Our Dave Gosher, our play-by-play man on TV, is a member of the band, rhythm guitar, and does some singing as well. So if there's a Double Minor gig somewhere in Vegas, you'll see some hockey people at one of those gigs.
Do they have a residency on non-game days?
The residence, at a dive bar called the Sand Dollar. They're playing there on Friday night. There's I really like Scarpetta at the Cosmo. That's an Italian restaurant. It's probably my favorite. Listen, you can't go wrong. There's a great restaurant or 3 or 4 in every hotel in Vegas. Just pick the best one of that hotel and go, and you'll have a great time.
Great stuff. All right, before we go, you mentioned the Bombers. Yeah. Zach Caleros, 3-year extension, 14-3, ticket booked for the Western Final on November 13th. This is where you really can put your fan hat on. But, I mean, who couldn't be a fan of what Walters, Wade Miller, and Mike O'Shea in particular have done so far? We're getting very close. I try not to mention the D word, but I'll tell you what, if they get it done in Regina on the 20th, we will be absolutely talking about a dynasty. Thoughts on the Bombers on the field and the moves they continue to make off the field to keep this thing rolling?
Well, you're right. It's theirs to lose. When I worked for the Argos for Don Matthews, early on in that season, we had Flutie and Pinball and ton of, just the list of players was fantastic. He said anything less than a Grey Cup will be a disappointment. And I think you can certainly say that about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers this year. If they don't make it to the Grey Cup, it's a major disappointment. If they go to the Grey Cup and lose, it's a disappointment. So there's pressure on them in that regard. The thing that I wonder about all of these signings, if you're Zach Collaros, are you signing a 3-year deal with Winnipeg if you don't know Mike O'Shea's future? Mike O'Shea does not have an extension. So to me, this is a major indication that O'Shea has been able to say to these guys in contract talks, or Walters has been able to say that they're going to get something done with O'Shea. And that is, as important as Zach Collaros is and Willie Jefferson, O'Shea is the most important piece of that puzzle. They must be close to having something worked out for O'Shea. Otherwise, if I'm Zach Collaros, I don't sign a 3-year deal with Winnipeg when you could go anywhere in the league if you don't know about Mike O'Shea and his future.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, I do think that they're sort of, intertwined, but if they're making progress on O'Shea, not that I think O'Shea would really be looking to go elsewhere. I think he just, wants to be and should be paid accordingly for the incredible run that he's had. But I'll tell you what, knowing that the quarterback's going to be there for another 3 years, I think probably makes the coach feel pretty good about hopefully continuing to keep this band together.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, if Mike O'Shea is going to coach in the CFL, he's going to coach in Winnipeg. I think the only other factor is, is there NFL interest? He doesn't, I don't think he has an agent, but, certainly Gil Scott, who represents a ton of people in the CFL and the NFL and is in around NFL circles all the time, has someone said to him, could this guy come down here and be a special teams coordinator or a defensive coordinator? I don't see him being a head coach right away, or maybe an assistant head coach. Like, those guys all make $3-4 million a year. So I'll be honest, if I had the way he relates to players and gets players to play and the kind of culture that he builds, throw the NFL, CFL part of it out. Mike knows the NFL game. He made an NFL roster as a player. That to me is a really interesting wrinkle. And if I was running a team, I'd want to look at the guy, the most successful guy in the league, the second best league in the world. I'd want to look at how he does it and whether or not he could do it for my team.
Well, I'll tell you what, that team down the street at Allegiant could use a culture builder like Mike O'Shea a lot better than the guy they've got right now. I will tell you that much.
I sat beside Mark Davis at a Van Morrison concert recently.
How was his hair?
Well, there wasn't a lot of conversation. He was very focused on the show. So, and I don't talk about anyone's hair, but that's the last thing I should be talking about. I will talk about your glasses, though. They're awful. My God. I should have said to Mark.
You and Gregory, once again, with the hot takes.
Caller number 1. He's still hot. Thanks for having me, Huss.
Dude, great stuff, man. Thanks for doing this. Enjoy this game tonight. And Jets are going to be back there in a couple of weeks. Hopefully we can do it again. Say hi to the girls. Hope all is well. And, of course, Shane and the rest of the gang there, too.
Will do. Thank you, Andrew.
Appreciate it. Golden Knights, Jets tonight. There's our guy, Gary Lawless, the Vegas Golden Knights insider. You already follow him, but if you're not already, give him a follow at Gary Lawless. All right. So our guy, DQ Nick, in the house. Great to have Nick popping in. Of course, Nick of the Nick and Nicky DQ group. Great sponsors of ours since day one here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. And I know, honestly, as so many of our listeners and viewers love to do what they can to support our sponsors, And I think it's safe to say that the DQ sponsorship is one of the favorites of everyone in. Pop down, grab a Blizzard, the amazing stack burgers, chicken fingers, all sorts of great stuff. DQ ice cream novelties as well to go take home for the kids. And of course, if you've got a party or an event coming up, it always goes better with the DQ ice cream cake. You can hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. Let them know what you're looking for. They'll custom make a DQ ice cream creation for you for a quick and easy pickup at any of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQs, DQ Niverville, DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, and DQ St. Anne's. I'll tell you what, little late night game tonight. Maybe not have too many, but it's always great to enjoy a game with a couple cold Little Brown Jugs. Of course, Little Brown Jug, Winnipeg's favorite local beer, proud sponsor of Winnipeg Sports Talk. And you can pick that up at the Tap Room and Brewery down on William Avenue. And, with some expected seasonably warm temperatures over the next few days, still a few days to check out that beautiful patio that hosted us for the first ever Winnipeg Sports Talk Sports Trivia Night. If you can't make it down to Little Brown Jug, you can find 1919, the Good Times Variety Pack, and all the Little Brown Jug offerings at your local fine beer store. And of course, you can also order online, littlebrownjug.ca, with city-wide delivery. All right, we do got to get to the Coolbet numbers lines before the end of the program, but let's get Michael Remis back in here because we've been waiting to do the retro reverse reboot, and now we've got the Winnipeg Jets version of it. Remo, first of all, Mike Kelly, awesome, one of the best, great stuff with Ken, and always fun having the lawman jump on back with us.
Yeah, you had to end that one quickly. You can't be slagging anyone in Vegas, Huss, and he's not going to comment on hair. Come on, Huss, you're putting him in a tough spot. A tough spot.
You cannot mention Mark Davis to me without asking what did his hair look like, because of all NFL owners or professional sports owners, for some reason he cuts his own hair, and that is I think he's probably got a Flowbee with him on it as all times. Anyways, yes, the hair crack was maybe that's why Gary had to press the ejector seat. I don't know. He was busy though. Great to have him in on a game day. All right, Jer, if you can, let's throw this this jersey up. This is the reverse retro new one, Remo. It's the first Jets 2.0 jersey to feature the 90s logo. What do you think?
I like it. They take the current. It's basically just the 90s Jets jersey with the logo we all love. Takes the striping. I like the numbers. I like the number thing. The best part to me about this jersey, Huss, is the original one had the Goals for Kids patch, and they updated it, so it's now the True North Youth Foundation patch, and they kind of just tucked that in subtly there. They didn't really show it. I posted a picture of it on the Winnipeg Sports Talk Twitter feed, but I don't think it's like one of the best ones. I don't think it's the worst one, but I think it's a pretty nice, clean looking jersey. And if the Jets make the playoffs this year, that is the one you're going to want to be wearing. I will say, I think a lot of the biggest complaint from Jets fans we've seen about it is there's no red. They're missing the red. Maybe it pops. Oh, there it is. There's that's the True North Youth Foundation logo, which I think is a really nice. I think that's the best touch on the jersey.
We all remember the Goals for Kids patches on the old jerseys.
Yeah. Here, I have the original white one here. I don't know if it's better than the original, but I think it's a nice. They call it reverse retro. I think it should be like retro remix or something. I think that would reverse. If no one knows, we say reverse retro. Everyone's like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, I don't even know what the hell it means as well.
But it's like remix retro
right now.
These are
These are all the ones. If you're with us on YouTube right now, you can see them. Panthers at the top left looks really cool. Flames makes me want to throw up.
Yeah, that one sucks.
What else do we
Detroit
have?
Sucks.
The Blackhawks one's weak. Kings is awesome. The Canucks with Johnny Hockey on it.
Okay, we'll have to describe them for these podcast listeners. I'll give you my top ones. The Panthers is the top one, baby blue with the palm tree hockey stick logo, and in the style of the 90s jerseys, which they should still be using. Their current jersey redesign that copies the Habs metal stripes. It sucks. The Habs going with the baby blue jersey, Huss. instead of white baby blue, going back to Expos baby
The
blue.
Expos colors. That's neat.
So the Calgary has a black. So Detroit is just like, remember the white Detroit jerseys that had just Detroit across, just Joey Gladstone wore it on Full House all the time, and now it's like black. It's red with black. Sucks.
Full House.
I'm
I don't
trying
mind
to
the
think. The
burnt orange
Calgary,
on the Coyotes, even though I hate the Kachino logo.
yeah,
What is that on the
yeah.
Blues jersey?
So it's, the Blues jersey is kind of like an old school. I think they've had that jersey before, maybe at a Heritage game where it was like baby blue that said St. Louis Blues on it. Now it's a yellow jersey. I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, okay. Edmonton, we talked about it earlier this week. It's the oil drop logo, but with orange. I'm not crazy with the orange, but fine. The Ducks one, just go back to the original Ducks jersey. It's basically
that's
that,
the
but
whole
just
point. They're not just re-releasing old jerseys. They're doing something new. Like for all the people that are whining about the red,
that's true.
Guys, they're not doing the same jersey. They are supposed to be different. That was the same thing when they did the last reverse retro, which I actually thought was cool when it first came out, but it's grown on me more and more. I think I still maybe like that one better than this one, but listen, they're not knocking it completely out of the park, but I sort of do get it. But I think it's important to note that these are not supposed to be just releasing an old retro jersey. That certainly could happen, but this Adidas series is creating something new out of the old and try and bringing it together.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And you're trying to, take an old one, make it new again. A couple other wins. The Bruins brought back the Pooh Bear logo, which is a good one. I like that one. You know what I'm talking about. I think it was late 90s. So I like the idea of remixing these retro and making them better. Some of them I'm not sure if they did. Most of them are wins. We did hear from the Flyers, as you said, Frank Cervelli doing some huge Big J journalism. I mean, this is like breaking news that the Flyers will be wearing Cooperalls with theirs, but only in warm-ups. So they couldn't wear them the whole game? Come on, Flyers. Let's get a game
Frank
with
said
Cooperalls.
it's a
Bring them back.
safety issue. It's a safety issue,
It's
as
a
reported by
safety.
NHL Insider. Apparently, they're too slippery. They're too slippery, so you can't wear them in. But well, we'll pay attention to those a couple times. Anyways, those are all up there. Check out the Winnipeg Sports Talk social feeds, Twitter, Instagram, for all the pictures. Remis did a great job of cranking that out as soon as it was available. All right, before we go, let's check out the Coolbet lines for tonight. Get to the hockey in a sec, but we do have pretty interesting football team between two struggling squads, Arizona and the Saints. Cardinals at home, 2.5-point favorites. I like them to win this game. We talked about it on the Lock Shop today. Nuke's back, DeAndre Hopkins. I'm expecting him to have a big, big impact, and I do like Arizona to cover the number, and I do actually think this one's going to go over as well. Hopefully, considering how bad these primetime games, it'd be nice to get a few touchdowns mixed in. All right, busy night, though, in the National Hockey League. Ducks and Bruins in Boston. Bruins minus 222 favorites. Predators minus 143 faves on the road against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Blue Jackets, of course, had that big comeback win against Vancouver earlier in the week. Battle of the Titans here, Remo. Arizona at Montreal. Habs aren't going to be a minus 172 favorite too many times this season, but that is the case tonight. Who knows? Maybe the Coyotes can continue that heater after beating the Toronto Maple Leafs and going against Montreal. Sharks, Rangers. Rangers a huge favorite, minus 303. Caps, Sens. Pal Jeremy's going to that game out in Ottawa, minus 112 for the Senators. A depleted Caps lineup, minus 104. Penguins, Kings. Great uniform matchup in that one. Minus 189 for Pittsburgh. Kings on the road, plus 157. Stars and Leafs. And I should mention, there's a couple great exclusives in the Coolbet exclusive page. One is the Hoppy Hour for DeAndre Hopkins, over 61.5 yards and an anytime touchdown, was plus 250. I think it's plus 240 right now. And the Here's to You, Mrs. Robertson prop with brothers Jason and Nick going head-to-head, both of them to get a point, paying plus 300. Check the Coolbet exclusives in the margin for those. Islanders, Devils. Islanders minus 147 favorites. And man, this is a wild one, Remo. Someone's got to win. This could be a loser leaves town match as far as the coaches go. Vancouver plus 141 after another multi-goal blown lead against the Minnesota Wild, who gave up 20 goals in their first 3 games.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. I think Vancouver's on this long road trip. I'm on Minnesota to bounce back. They got Marc-Andre Fleury. I know it's been a rough start for them in terms of, allowing goals, but they'll turn it around. Vancouver, I have no confidence in. I do like this, Montreal against Arizona. That's an interesting one. Sean Monahan, he's had such a great bounce back season.
First
with
line
Montreal
guy now.
there. I'll be honest, I'm so focused on all these hockey games. There's like a ton of games. This Carolina-Edmonton game could be a Stanley Cup preview if you go by predictions, but I completely forgot about this Saints-Cardinals game. And I'm trying to think of the other games that are interesting.
Well, the other ones, I'm not even finished because we do have Carolina-Edmonton. Carolina is my cool bet pick of the day. We're going to try and make it 3 in a row. Shout out to the Blues for getting us the dub last night. Basically a pick 'em. Carolina minus 106, Edmonton minus 111. I do like the Canes. I think they're one of the best road teams in the league and match up quite well against Edmonton. Buffalo at Calgary. Buffalo coming off that win back by Eric Comrie. Calgary, one of the top teams in the league. Heavy home favorite, minus 294. And then our final game of the night, it is the Jets and Vegas Golden Knights. Jets, interestingly enough, opened at plus 175. It's gone down to plus 168. Maybe people thinking they can carry some momentum in to take on the Knights. Knights, for their part, minus 200. Let's see if we've got what we've got here for goal totals right now. Kyle Connor plus 150. Eichel plus 142. Scheifele plus 210. Where's Mason Appleton? Appleton plus 410. He's getting some top line minutes. Cole Perfetti, who scored last night, plus 335. And Neil Pionk, the hero last night, plus 770. Of course, folks, all the options are there at Coolbet. And if you like either of those exclusives, click on the Coolbet exclusives in the margin and make your wagers there. If you haven't played a Coolbet before, use the promo code WST. We'll hook you up with a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. Great show today, Remote. 9 o'clock start tonight for the game. And we'll be back at it tomorrow with another packed show, looking back at these last 2 games and getting ready for the Maple Leafs visit on Saturday night for Hockey Night in Canada. Before we go, how are you feeling about this game tonight?
The Jets game? I'm actually feeling a lot better than I was for the last one. I think it's going to be close, competitive. Are they going to win on back-to-back? I'm not sure, but at least we're not hearing that mentality. Oh, it's back-to-back. We're going from the Mountain Time Zone
scheduled
to
loss.
the Pacific Time Zone. We haven't heard that it's a scheduled loss. So I like that, Huss, because I feel like, we hear so much on these back-to-backs before. How it was, you hear, we're going through, we've traveled how many time zones.
Prophecy.
This is the third game in a row on a different time zone. We haven't heard that this year from the team, and we haven't heard about back-to-backs.
No, I think the Jets, in some ways, I think from a fan's perspective, you kind of hope that they could have gotten a win out of these 2 games. Now they've got one. Time to get greedy, see if they can squeeze a couple more out of the desert going against the Golden Knights. And again, as I mentioned, when Lawman was on with us, they are back in Vegas in a couple weeks, I believe, on the Halloween weekend, which would be an amazing time to get out to Sin City. All right, folks, we got to run to get the podcast up. Enjoy the game tonight and make sure to join us tomorrow. Carlo Koliakovo is going to join us. Really looking forward to having Carlo on. Get the latest on the blue and white before the Jets and Leafs go at it on Saturday night. We'll also have Brandon Rowicki jump on with us. And, of course, we got to have a visit with Lee Hacksaw Hamilton as well. So a big Friday show coming up tomorrow, recapping Jets Vegas and looking ahead to the Saturday night game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Folks, enjoy your evening. Maybe get a nap in. 9 o'clock start. Check out K&R, the boys, after the show as well. And we'll see you tomorrow, 1 p.m. right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Thanks for being with us and have a great night.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.